Gonk. Gonk, gonk. Gonk, 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 gonk. Gonk, 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 gonk. Gonk, 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 gonk. Gonk, 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 gonk,
Yep.
gonk,
I think he's
gonk.
good. I think he's got it.
You sure he doesn't need these?
Gonk, gonk.
Nah, I don't think he needs him. I think we're good.
All right, fine.
I think we're good. Badonkagonk's ready. I'm ready. Aaron, are you ready?
Yes. Welcome, everybody, to Badonkagonk. How's everyone doing today? We hope you guys are having a good day. We have some things Star Warsy to cover.
We do.
I think so.
We do.
Oh, yeah, we do. Also, we're going to try to pick up some questions in between a few of our topics that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So there should be a Q&A thing Gonk is setting up over on YouTube, and then the channel points over on Twitch. So make sure you guys use those, and we'll try to grab a couple in between topics.
Yes, Aaron. We shall.
We shall
do that.
Oh, man.
Well, what's all on the agenda for today, Aaron? I'm ready for some Star Wars talk.
What all do we have? We have, there's some new stuff with Tales. We're going to talk about Tales a little bit.
Yep.
Not like Sonic Tales, but Tales of stuff.
Tales of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
We have the book.
Yes.
Admiral Thrawn. Well, I guess he's not an admiral there, but
no,
you know, Thrawn, his third in his trilogy.
Yep, a lesser
his second
evil
trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess just kind of talking about Thrawn after we finish that, thoughts of Thrawn in general.
Yep.
Also, I don't know. I mean, we can get into it later on too, but I've never read the original trilogy, so I was curious on like after having some of this stuff, what chat's thoughts or your thoughts, or people who have read that trilogy, what they think of like whatever the differences are, or
Yeah, sure.
what
We can do
Thrawn's
that.
like with that.
It sounds fun.
Also, want to talk a little bit about Skywalker.
Skywalker.
Yeah, a
It's
local boy. No,
Skywalker!
I knew you were going to that. A local boy.
We're going to talk about the name Skywalker.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a conversation with Melanie, I don't know, last week or something like that, and it kind of spurred some thoughts, and I wanted to kind of bring it up with you and with chat and see what people thought about that.
Sure.
But first, before we get into a lot of that kind of stuff, I also wanted to bring up a little bit of sad news that I saw that happened just recently, which was Patty Maloney passed away the other day.
A death in the family.
Yes.
And if you don't recognize the name from Little House on the Prairie,
Yeah.
you should recognize the name.
From Ernest Saves Christmas.
No.
She was
She
an
was?
elf in Ernest Saves Christmas.
Okay, I didn't know that.
She was also Lois Adams in the Addams Family movie.
Uh-huh.
She was also McDonald's. Do you remember McDonald's commercials when they had Grimace and Ronald
Yeah.
and the Hamburglar?
Yeah, of course I do.
She played Birdie. I don't believe she was the
Really?
voice, but she
I
was
didn't know that.
she was in the suit.
More sad now.
But what we know her from most of all is she also played Lumpy
In
from
the Star Wars Holiday Special.
the holiday special.
I don't know if she voiced Lumpy,
I don't know either,
but she played him.
but she had played Lumpy as well.
R.I.P.
So I saw that and I was like, oh man, and I was a little bummed by that because like
Yeah, I get you.
as much as we talk about that, like it was still like it's something. It's always gonna be a memory of in my head.
Easily
is
the
Lumpy.
most memorable part of that holiday special, I think. is
Yeah.
Lumpy.
Yeah, and then Chewbacca's kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Itchy, also memorable, but for different reasons.
Yes, different reasons.
Yeah.
So
R.I.P. Yep. To Patty.
But moving on from there, I think the first thing we were going to talk about was new trailer that dropped
Yeah.
just yesterday.
It was just yesterday, Tales of the Underworld. Which, have you rewatched the trailer at all?
I did not.
I did, and I can't believe I didn't clock, because we were talking about Cad Bane's appearance. Like, what do you think? What time period do you think this is from? Is he young or is he old? And I was so concerned on like looking at his face and trying to find age that I wasn't looking
His hat.
that he didn't have his tubes in.
Oh yeah, that's true. He did not have.
He didn't have
in.
his tubes.
Yeah.
He's no tubes. We have 2 tubes in Rogue One, but no tubes here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So I have to assume that means it's way before
he does tubing,
He's doing tubing. Now you know what the tubes are for?
air,
You got it.
because he has to breathe because he has no nose.
I think the Duros have no nose. I think it's officially supposed to be like it's an anti-Jedi thing. Like you can't choke him because he can force lungs and air into his lungs.
So does he do it when he has to start like combating Jedi then, and he like mods his body for that? Is that the idea?
No,
there?
I don't even know where I heard that. That doesn't appear in the Clone Wars or anything.
I
But
remember
I've
it
certainly heard it.
I remember being in Clone Wars.
I gotta
anyway.
source that.
Source it.
I'm gonna source it.
Okay.
Yeah, Cad Bane's tubes. And how do we know
Cad Bane
that?
2 tubes.
Because sometimes I just hear things and I just assume it's true. I never research.
Yeah. See, you can't. You always got to do a little bit because people can say all kinds of stuff. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, we had Tales of the Underworld trailer. I'm curious on chat's thoughts on it too, and what you guys enjoyed with that. Nexus says he also had breathing tubes, which enabled him to survive being force choked, and rocket boots to help him keep up with force imbued Jedi, which was from the Deception episode of Hostage Crisis. Okay. So it was somewhere in
Yep.
Clone Wars then. With
Well, hey, I
Hostage
mean,
Crisis.
we don't know how he quite hooked up by being employed by the Emperor, right? By Sidious. They could have had like a little bit of a tussle in the beginning. He's like, I gotta get new tubes. After he did, I don't know.
I mean, he must have been force choked at least once.
Yeah,
Right? It's also interesting because, like, usually you aren't force choked by Jedi.
Yeah.
You know? It's usually more of a Sith
Well, when they
thing.
get pissed off, and I imagine they get pissed off a lot more around
How
Cad.
often do you see a Jedi use a force choke?
Well, when they get mad,
Okay, name a non-Skywalker who force choked.
I'm sure they exist, but I cannot name them.
Because the ones I can think of are Anakin and Luke are the first 2 that I
Yeah.
can think of where I'm like, oh, they're Jedi. But then also Anakin falls to the dark side. And
Sure.
Luke, like, it's that moment where you're like, ooh, he's fallen. Or it's Vader coming in and he chokes those Gamorreans, you know?
sure.
The fat ones.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of another
Super
Jedi.
fat ones. I can't think of any.
Super fat.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
Continue.
you're right. It's normal fat, because that's what they should be. I just had an idea for a thing. I gotta forget it. I can't forget it. I gotta write it down.
I never knew that's what they were for before now. Oh, really, Nexus? Awesome. Well, cool. We all learn something sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Those are the breeding tubes. Anyway, I'm going to assume that part of the story will take place far before we've seen Cad Bane.
sure, and it also could be like the first episode, and we are seeing, the Dooku story took place not just like in the same era. It took place before and like moved on through, and we got to see up to like episode 1, and then before episode 1. So we could see him like where he kind of started, and then where he goes later on, or it could be much earlier, and then hers, Ventress stuff is much later as well. So I'll be curious to see kind of how that story plays out. But I'm really excited, especially for Ventress. Like I love Cad Bane, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah. But we've gotten a decent amount of Cad Bane.
Yeah,
In like 4 different shows or so now.
sure. Ventress, though, I have like so many questions about. We read The Dark Disciple, and we watched Clone Wars, and that's kind of all it had. I'm like, okay, well that's where it ends.
Mm-hmm.
But then like now I want to see this to connect into other stuff to see where she goes or how things happened or if it explains anything. So I'm excited for that. And from what I understood, there was someone, either I read something or maybe someone said that it was said that there is a reason that she showed up where she showed up, but it hadn't been explained.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like there's a reason for this, but we will explain it in the future.
We were told that, hey, we considered this, just not enough to put it in the show. Yet. Also, we were talking about the kid, the Padawan that she's training.
Yeah.
And the possibility came across that, what if it's Jude Law's character from Skeleton Crew? Would that work timeline-wise? I mean, that's taking place around the Mando time, which is, past Return of the Jedi. Like 10 years past, I think.
But you're looking at, do you think that he's only like a little bit older than Luke at that point?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
You know what I mean?
I don't know when this takes place or how old he's meant to be. I was just trying to think of like, who could this kid be?
I mean, this moment has to be sometime after episode 3, I feel like.
Sure. And he mentioned a female Jedi Master, I think.
I'm watching.
Now, she certainly wouldn't be a Jedi at that point. But it was just something I was thinking of.
Okay.
Maybe Captain Silva. It's Baby Silva. Baby Yoda, Baby Silva could happen.
Sure. He wasn't a baby. He was, just like he was like an Ezra age or so.
Compared to Baby Yoda, he's a baby.
You know what? I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
Because we've seen Ezra in that time frame, and Ezra will be the same age as Luke, and Jude Law does not look the age of Ezra.
Maybe he grew up on a planet with 3 sons.
Like Obi-Wan. He aged real poorly here. All right.
I don't know. I was trying to think of maybe it could be there, but it's not like there's a resemblance if they're going for that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. This is the thing: is like, is it going to be related to something we know, something new, and we feed into that in the future?
As Nexus says, well, that would suck because the one who trained him was killed in front of him. Is what he says. I believe he says that.
That was he says that in Skeleton Crew too.
So.
Yeah, Ezra is a few days older than Luke. Yeah, Ezra's like the same age as Luke. So I don't know. I'm gonna say no.
Okay.
And I'm gonna hope it's something different.
Well, you can't. I will not accept your no until you give me an alternative. Or else we go with that.
Damn it! All right, I don't have an answer for that then. So
we'll
go with that.
In terms of alternatives, though, me and you were talking about. It'd be a fun thing to talk about. Let's try to crack more tales of stories. What would be fun? We've had Tales of the Jedi that include both Dooku and Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. We've had Tales of the Empire with Barriss Offee and Morgan Elsbeth, and then now we're getting Tales of the Underworld with Cad Bane and Asajj Ventress.
Yeah,
I think those are some pretty cool spreads of characters. But where else could we go? What other tales of could be out there?
Where else could we go?
Yeah.
Okay. I started trying to think about this and just write a list. And some of these I have an idea of what it could be.
Okay.
And some of these I have no idea of what they could be, and I just thought it sounded cool.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, one I had was Tales of Rogue Squadron. Right?
Okay, yeah, sweet.
I don't know if that focuses on, like, Wedge.
Yeah.
I don't know if it focuses on, like, Luke. But I was just like, they keep talking about a Rogue Squadron movie. Okay. They don't give us a Rogue Squadron movie. I love the games. Like, I was like, it'd be so cool to have maybe some stories and missions revolving around Rogue Squadron.
I like that. You could do, like, a Tales of the Rebellion, but specifically you're wanting Rogue Squadron or like Starfighters.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like that.
I was thinking more like that.
Okay. So if you do Wedge, you could do like episode 1 is Wedge in the Empire. Episode 2 is, skipping around the Rebel story.
Yeah.
And then episode 3 is while he's getting in the Millennium Falcon for Rise of Skywalker. I don't know, something.
Like, you could pick 2 characters and follow them. Like how it has Tales of the Empire. It's not about the whole Empire. It's about these 2 characters within the Empire, right? So Tales of Rogue Squadron could be like taking 2 characters and let's tell stories about them and like maybe before they're in Rogue Squadron or during or whatever. And I thought like that could be a cool thing to give us some more Rogue Squadron like canon stories.
Maybe Dak could be one of the characters.
Yeah.
That could be cool. I mean, Dak has
Hobby?
There's Hobby.
Yeah.
I was just saying Dak just because Dak has that, like, I'm going to take the whole Empire myself, It'd be cool if, like, you set up, like, that guy could, but then he just dies. Like Boba Fett or something.
Yeah.
Hobby could be a good one. I'm trying to think of all, like, the major, Porkins. And not really, that's Red Squadron from episode 4, not necessarily Rogue Squadron.
Gold Leader.
Yeah, Gold Leader.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. And I think Tales of the Rebellion could be fun, too, though I suppose we're kind of getting those stories with Andor and Rogue One, that type of thing when it comes to Rebellion stuff. And, Tales of the Senate, maybe.
All about Palpatine?
Palpatine or...
No.
I am the Senate. Yeah, I'm skipping ahead, but yeah, Rogue Squadron I think would be a solid one. I know Patty Jenkins' movie isn't officially canceled, but I don't.
It's another one of those things where I keep hearing, and then it's like when the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic. I'm like, oh, it's happening, and then I didn't hear anything for a long time. And then I heard like it's canceled. Then I heard it wasn't canceled. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and I just keep hearing those kind of things.
When I was coming up with these, I was trying to be like, okay, here's like the ones I think they could do, and then the ones that they probably can't do. But it does seem like this Tales series is building upon the building blocks of the Clone Wars and Rebels and Bad Batch in terms of like the technology pushing animation forward. Like it's a little easier to do Ahsoka and Dooku and Asajj and Cad and Barriss because we know what they look like in animation. Morgan was really the only like new main character we got in animation, right?
Yeah.
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 The one that I was thinking of was, and I know that Clone Wars is kind of this, but Tales of the Clones I think would be fun because I'm thinking of. You got that?
Well, I wrote it down and I put a question mark because I was like, are there more clone stories that I think would be cool, or did Clone Wars cover enough of it?
I have 2 clone stories I want to see. The first one I want to see is the first meeting between Anakin and Rex.
Okay.
We never got that.
Sure.
Rex kind of came into the canon as a version of Alpha, I think his name was, in the Republic comics. There was a clone that he was an ARC trooper. He really felt like he was that character, and they just kind of gave him a new name. But then Rex became his own character.
Sure.
I would love to see that dynamic because I have no idea what it's like. So I want to see that. And then, I don't know if we'll get this anywhere else, Commander Cody, Order 66. I think would be a really fun story as well.
Okay.
Like, after, we only kind of see him, like, shoot him
shoot
down.
at Obi-Wan.
But we don't get to see any, like, emotional, fallout or anything with Cody, and he's kind of one of our hero clones,
If you follow Rex, like right now, I don't think we have a lot of the connections between like Clone Wars to like Rebels and stuff. You know what I mean?
Not
like
really.
what happens in between any of that kind of stuff too, of where some different characters go. But that could be cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna save my favorite one for when we're closer to the top of things.
Okay, cool.
I have one that I thought of, and I was like, that's really cool, and I keep changing what I think it could be as it goes. I'm like, this could be about this. I was like, no, wait, maybe it could be about this.
Yeah.
Like, no, wait. I think the easy one we haven't talked about, which is because we had Tales of the Jedi having Tales of the Sith.
Tales of the Sith.
Which, I mean, with that, like, you could cover things involving Sidious. You could cover Plagueis, which we haven't really had in any kind of canon. You could do Bane. You could do Bane and Plagueis.
You could. There's so many options.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what are the, like, okay, take Palpatine. Like, what are the stories that, like, we haven't got a chance to tell this one? I want to see this one.
Sure, yeah. And I don't know for sure what those stories are.
Like Sidious meeting Mother Talzin in order to get Maul.
Ooh.
Might be interesting. Because we know they had some type of connection when we read Son of Dathomir.
Sidious getting Maul, that could be cool. Like,
That's
I remember a
story.
fan film that was was it a fan film? I feel like I remember something that kind of touched on a little bit of like earlier Maul stuff.
Gotcha.
But it wasn't ever anything I knew of. It wasn't actual canon. It was just like fan stuff.
Yeah, just fun fan.
And I was like, oh, that's cool. So
Yeah.
like, and even like Tales of the Sith could also be an earlier Darth Maul thing, and even later Darth Maul stuff. You know, like there's some elements of Darth Maul that were like, well, what happened in this time frame? You know, like you could do that.
And you can do, and that fits into the whole like, well, use previous assets we already have made, so it's not as expensive. You have all those characters.
Yeah. So
Except maybe you need like a baby Maul or a younger Maul.
yeah, I suppose so.
Someone
younger.
He was kind of a baby in that comic, right? Isn't there like one shot of him like younger? I think I can't remember now.
I don't remember. Maybe yes.
I don't remember.
Perhaps. So that's I think is like the easy one to jump into.
Okay, so that's a good. Yeah, that's an awesome one. I mean, Plagueis, anything Plagueis, but fucking Acolyte.
Sure, but like if you do it, you could have like let's take up from here, tell the story we're going to tell here, and if you did Sidious, you could have it where it's all chronological.
Yeah.
Like kind of like when we watched Dooku and Ahsoka and stuff, right? Like it felt like we were kind of watching the chronological order of these occurrences.
Yeah.
These things occurring.
Yeah.
I think the Empire might have been the same way. I can't remember right now. But you could start with Plagueis and then have one on Sidious, like, you know, like it kind of like backs and forth, or you get to the point where now Sidious takes over Plagueis, and now it's a Sidious storyline for Tales of the Sith, and you move that way. We see him setting up or becoming a senator for Naboo, or you know whatever the case is, whatever stories they think would be interesting to tell.
Yeah.
That we're like, man, we never got to see this stuff. How he got Darth Maul to be his apprentice, or you know whatever.
Like. We know that he survives from episode 6 because he appears in 9. Like,
Yeah.
What if?
Or that I was about to say, like him getting to Exegol and stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
What if
whatever
you just
that
have
was.
like a clone body and just goes, oh, you know, just wakes up, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Skywalker.
Yeah. His perspective of like the Rey stuff, or like
Yeah.
them escaping, you know, the parents escaping, or you know,
Yeah.
whatever the case is. Like,
Yeah.
there's some other things you could get with that. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, you could do that. Like really,
and that's not
jump
even
into
counting,
the
like-
Phantom Menace of it all.
That's not even counting like Bane showing up in Clone Wars, right? Like you could like let's establish some Bane stuff. Do Bane and Plagueis.
Mark
you know?
Hamill voiced Bane.
Yeah.
You know, he'll come back and do a Tales of. I would see that.
And that's one of the things too, is that with the Tales doing animation, like there's a lot of really good voice actors. You could touch a lot of characters that you couldn't get in live action now and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
The thing that I mean, one of the ones, and I don't know what it would be. It could be Tales of like the Bounty Hunters.
Okay.
Or something like that, but getting a middle ground of Boba Fett. I keep talking about how much I would love to have Daniel Logan portray like between episode 3 and episode 4 Boba Fett, just to be able to have that actor do that again. You know, like Tamir Morrison's great. He's older. I love him as older Boba Fett in the timeline that we've been dealing with now. But I'm like, let's use this. I know he doesn't look like Jango Fett did. Like, he's probably around the age that Jango Fett would have been back in episode 2,
I
right?
imagine he probably is. But damn you time.
But he probably doesn't look like him. But because it's Daniel Logan, most of the time the mask is on. Like, I think it would just be kind of cool to be able to have that be there, you know?
That would be cool.
But I also thought about Bounty Hunters, and if you want to tell Boba Fett stories. But the other one I want to jump to was Imbo. I just really like Imbo, and I think Imbo would be a really cool one to cover.
Imbo's so cool, but is he so cool because you see him so little?
I mean, that's one thing, too,
I don't
that
think
you
so.
can have,
He's
right?
so cool. He has a cool hat, and he has a wolf. How would that get old?
I don't know.
I think, yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like Tales of the Underworld is their bounty hunter one, you know? But, I mean, to be fair, like, you could easily just make it bounty hunter and have it be different characters. Dengar could be fun.
Well, yeah, if you do Tales of the Jedi 2,
Yeah.
like, you could just focus on 2 different Jedi.
You could.
You know, and
Yeah.
still do another Tales of... Because, I mean, there's tons of Jedi. I also thought about doing, like, Tales of the Council. Because, like, there's so many Jedi Masters that we just never get to see anything on. Rancius, you know, Poof, is that his name?
Yariel Poof.
Like, what's that guy do? I want to see some double brain mind controls or whatever he can do, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I want to see a few of these characters that we never get to see do anything.
Sure.
Do something, you know?
Yeah.
And you could even have the Tales of the Council be like 6 episodes, but each one's with a different master. You know? You don't even have to tell a story for all 3. Just like, let's have a story for each one.
I mean, that would be cool. Yeah, absolutely. Is it like them on Jedi missions, or is it something more personal?
Yeah.
Damn, man.
Like, you could
I
do
wanna do
either
these.
one. I don't know. Like, Kiadi-Mundi's just him finding more wives.
So you
Like, I don't know what it is, you know? Like,
Yeah.
something like that, but...
I mean, there's generally 12 members on the council, but you're saying 6. Do you have, like, an idea of, like, which ones
Which
you
one?
want to focus
I mean,
on?
like, you might not... I mean, we've had I think we've had a lot more of like Mace Windu stories
Yeah.
and Plo Koon and Yoda and like a lot more of them, but we don't get to see like people don't know who Poof is. I don't think people know who Rancius is.
No.
I don't think people know who I'm trying to think of more Jedi because there's ones I can't name. You know what
Sure,
I mean? Like
yeah.
Adi Gallia has like an episode in Clone
There's a
Wars
little
I can
bit.
think
Yeah,
of.
not much though.
I know her mainly from Jedi Starfighter though,
Mm-hmm.
like you could pick a few of those ones that are a little more lesser known that weren't even used in Clone Wars.
We did get a little more Yaddle, and
There was more
and
Yaddle
the
there,
Dooku stuff
and
from Tales of
I
the
enjoyed
Jedi.
that because we didn't really get to see any Yaddle do anything,
Yeah.
except for
Yeah, I know.
Even Peel, we got to see a little bit in the Clone Wars,
We saw him die.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Like
The
maybe-
Russian Jedi.
Maybe we get to see how he loses his eye, like
Yeah.
a story like that or something. But just picking a few of those where like maybe they're lesser known. Like I wouldn't pick the ones that are known. Like pick ones that didn't even talk in the movies and like
Yeah.
didn't show up in the Clone Wars or
Sure.
something.
Coleman Trebor. He's the guy.
The guy who dies and falls off, right?
yeah,
He looks
like-
like a dinosaur.
Yeah, he has the big shark fin. and
Yeah.
he's like, I'm gonna kill Count Dooku and stop the war. And
Yeah.
Jango just shoots him a bunch of times.
Yeah.
and stunts on him. Coleman Trebor doesn't really make it.
No. Kit Fisto, but I get a lot Kit Fisto,
I don't get as much Kit Fisto as I'd like.
CSA-10?
So, yeah, that would be good.
CSA-10? Something like that.
CSA-10. I love hitting the Clone Wars macro series. He has like a gladiator helmet he puts on, and the horns come out. It
That's
looks so sweet.
Pretty cool,
I can see that happening.
Yeah, see him
okay.
to go into battle and he does that for something.
Yeah. Okay, so like a Tales of the Jedi or a Council type of thing. I
Yeah.
like those too. Gotcha. A lot of my other ones are kind of like going away from the like, well, let's keep it around the Clone Wars or this area so
Sure.
that we can get away. But
Okay.
I think it's easy to say something like Tales of the Old Republic.
Yeah.
Just finding ways to recanonize some of those classic stories would be fun, especially if we're not going to get a remake of the game or like a 10-episode series or something. Come on.
Yeah. And if you release the game, you could still release Tales of the Old Republic. And,
Yeah.
kind of like how the Ahsoka one had an episode that's very similar to the book, but also a little different.
It did, yeah.
Where it's like, well, you kind of get the same idea. Like you could do something like that where it's like, well, the game tells this story, but you still get some of it in Tales.
Sure.
You could do that too.
Yeah.
But Tales of the High Republic could be cool too. I also thought about, what is it in the newer one? Tales of the New Republic?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the New Republic era is so rife for exploration.
There's not a lot that we
There's
really
nothing.
know about it.
All we really know is that they're so afraid of fascists that they're not doing anything.
Sure. Yeah.
Or I should say they're so afraid of becoming fascist that they're not doing anything. Yeah. That would be interesting. Tales of the New Jedi Order. Or Luke's Academy, maybe. Mm-hmm. We know that there were, 12 or so students or something like that he had. And Kylo Ren kind of messed all that up, but that could be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. We know that he was putting together like a hut with some spider droids.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
His new order and stuff like that, and that could go with like the new Jedi Order probably goes with Rey because they're working on that stuff with her. But like you could also have like some kind of Tales of Skywalkers
Yeah.
where like it covers like Luke, Leia, like in between episodes 6 and 7. You
Okay.
could do something with that. You could also touch on some Anakin stories if you
We're going
want
to do
to.
Tales of Skywalker.
you know.
I want to go Shmi.
You could do Shmi. Yeah,
That would be cool.
Yeah.
What's Shmi like?
I don't know. I don't know what she's like.
Just-
And there was no father.
There was no
you know,
father.
so like,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
don't
she
know.
was Watto's slave, sold, or Gardola the Hutt before her.
Mm-hmm.
I know that she's not from Tatooine.
Okay.
She came to Tatooine, or at least that's the old legends. I don't know. There's this really sweet book that I have that had an illustration of her like getting off a ship holding baby Anakin.
Gotcha.
So it was implied, at least in the old legends, that Shmi and Anakin are not from Tatooine. They just live there now.
Okay. But that was another one I thought of too, especially while just kind of thinking about ideas. I'm like, Skywalker doesn't have to be two people. It could be just kind of like, let's tell some stories among the line of Skywalkers that we always kind of skipped over.
Sure.
Or that, we didn't really cover or anything,
You could do something like Tales of like Crimson Dawn.
Yeah. See, I thought about that.
That could be
I was like,
cool.
Underworld would have been good for that one.
Sure, it would have been.
But yeah, Crimson Dawn or the like the Pikes, like whatever Darth Maul's doing after
Shadow
Solo,
Collective,
like all
yeah.
that kind of stuff, like that stuff would be real cool stories to have too.
I could see that.
You want to hear my last
Yeah.
my top 3 that I think are my
What are your
favorites?
top 3?
My favorites. I'm I'm gonna make this one 3,
Okay.
which is Tales of Jabba's Palace,
Okay.
which is more like I don't know exactly who it focuses on. It could be Boba Fett, it could be Bib Fortuna, it could be Jabba the Hutt.
Bib Fortuna will be fun. Like, okay, Bib Fortuna and the Gamorreans. Like, Bib Fortuna, like, is like, you guys are lazy. You need to lose weight. But then he eats all the food, and they get smaller.
And they get smaller because they can't keep up. There you
We've
go.
cracked that.
That's one story
That's
right
one of
there,
them.
right?
Okay, so Jabba's Palace. What else? Do you have any ideas for him?
Getting and raising the Rancor, that Rancor guy who cries when the Rancor dies, like he's
Yeah.
real connected. But I don't know what other
so,
stories
yeah.
you really want to have in there. I think Boba Fett's one because he seems to be real connected with Jabba the Hutt.
The Adventures of Salacious Crumb.
But it was one of those things where I'm like, what if you took from here and then that where it spans off from?
I like that.
But I also don't know if it should all be. That's why I was like, should these be like they've been, where it's one character, and we have like 3 episodes each? Because my other 2 could work that way, or it could work entirely different.
I mean, I feel like you have to just because the precedent has been set. Like 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a pattern.
Sure.
And we have the 3rd series coming now.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know, but I think that this is a fantasy series. You can do what you want. But
Yeah. Because my next one has a lot of options.
Okay.
I like the name of it, but I don't know 100% what it could be because it could
Okay.
be a lot, which is Tales of the Force.
Just the Force.
Like the Force. Like, what stories do you want to have? Like, anything. You could cover anything that goes from Mortis stuff
Yeah.
to Qui-Gon
Yeah.
to, like, specific Jedi and stuff. Like, things related to the Bendu.
Bendu.
That
Yeah.
dang owl.
The dang owl.
That's always flying around Ahsoka.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The Morai. Yeah, that would be really cool.
Like, I have a lot of questions on the Force, and also because it's Tales of the Force, it could also connect into things that relate to like the Night Sisters that use the Force differently, or the Bordatans, who like use it a little differently, and like you're seeing the Force in different ways.
Sure.
But like that's another one of those things where it's like, do you pick 2 things, or do you kind of tell like maybe one story among like spanning years? Like you could span a lot of years with Tales of the Force.
I feel like we gotta stick to the 2 characters thing, just because, especially when you talk about Tales of the Empire, that's when people start going like, "Oh, bad choices."
Sure.
So there's almost like part of a game of being like, "Oh, I like Tales of the Empire, but I didn't want these 2.
Sure.
Or I didn't want this one. I could have gone somewhere else." I like the idea of like it's not just the promise of what it is, but then the selection.
All right. Well, then my number 1, I want to know what you think, because I think the routes of going it is one of 2 ways. Tales of the Falcon.
Oh.
And you focus on Lando and Han and different stories of them and it all like has to be kind of around having the Falcon and stuff. I also thought about Rey, so then I thought about like, what if it's not that? What if it is the character is the Falcon, and you can tell any stories from the Falcon's creation all the way to what we know of Rey having it on it going to Jakku, like how it got there. Like, Tales of the Falcon could be just about the Falcon and not about individual characters.
Rey talks about like what 4 or so different owners. Like, he got it from Duquesne, and he got it from the Hardy Boys, and or whatever they said. So you could have like, when Han lost it.
Yeah.
Could be a fun one.
It's like Tales of the Falcon ended up being my favorite one the more I thought about it.
It's like Appa lost, man. I don't want that. That's sad.
Well, it doesn't have to be just that segment too.
Appa's lost days. Yeah,
you could have some stuff in between. When Lando gets it, a journey Lando goes on before Han takes it from the gambling, thing. Yeah,
I mean, that's
maybe even Lando having it sometime later.
I like that.
I don't know. Like
Sure.
there's just a lot of things. I'm like, you know what? I love the Falcon, and what if it focused on the Falcon itself versus 2 characters?
Do you think Lando bought the Falcon new?
I don't know. I assume, but he could have won it in gambling. I don't remember if he says anything in Solo. He just kind of has it. But does he? Because they also, oh no, there's a boot.
Yeah.
He
Got it impounded.
But also sometimes I was like, is it his? But then he has a thing of capes.
He
has
has capes.
And like
He's got capes.
I remember watching that being like, is this his
Yeah,
ship?
sure. I get
So
you.
I don't know where he gets it initially, but you could tell that in Tales of the Falcon.
You could.
So that ended up as I went through and talked more and more and thought more and more, like that ended up being like my favorite one that I had of just because of like what options you could have of what stories you wanted to tell.
Do you think Star Wars would ever have the balls to destroy the Falcon? Like, other than 3PO and R2, it's really the one thing that could be in every movie. If you wanted to, going into the future,
I mean, they did it for the Razor Crest. And it wasn't as well known, or as long lived, But that was one of those things where it's like, oh no,
Like,
that. And also, with Han and I don't know Chewie, like what his future will be like in stories and stuff too. But like, I always think of them with the Falcon, like not having Han and stuff. Like eventually, like Rey, like sure Rey has it, but it doesn't mean she has to always have it.
It's such a stark difference between Legends continuity and canon continuity. Because in Legends, Chewbacca dies, but in canon, Han dies. In Legends, like they talk about how like they don't remove Chewie's giant seat. Like Leia sits in it and it's big. I think there's at one point that like it's like a thing where it's like, hey, we have to move on. We need to get this giant seat out of here. It takes up space and no one can sit in it. And Han refuses. That was always a very sweet moment.
Maybe you should just burn it down anyway. It's infested with porgs.
Yeah, it probably is.
I
do like the idea of like one Lando, one Han story with the Falcon. You could also maybe throw like the Falcon's first day and then the Falcon's last day, maybe something like that too.
Yeah. But yeah, you could show how Lando gets it.
Yeah.
Like just it doesn't have to. I thought at one point like, is it all on the Falcon? But I think that limits it too much. It should just be revolving around the Falcon, like. People that have it, and it's your excuse for like why you're showing these characters. Okay. Right? Because it's like Empire, Jedi, like you're just following characters. Yeah. And even Ahsoka would tell you she's no Jedi, But she was told her story was told in Tales of the Jedi,
It is curious that like Tales of the Jedi, and we had two characters that would define themselves ultimately as not Jedi.
Yeah.
I really like the Falcon one. I think that's my favorite one so far.
Yeah, that's why like that one was my top one out of the ones I was thinking about trying to come up with like ideas of what they could be. But yeah, I don't know. I'm curious on chat if they had any, or if they submitted any questions about Tales.
Tales of Gunga City, maybe.
Tales of Gunga City,
like show all like the heroes of the Gungans.
Okay.
See something like that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like Tarpals.
Like one time, like the sea monsters attacked the city,
and they're fighting against.
Fight them off. That would be pretty sweet.
Dude, it's like an underwater Godzilla thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get some more stories of Jar Jar, like because he kind of disappears except for in the Clone Wars now.
Jar Jar just has to go and get a bigger fish to eat this one, and this one doesn't care. I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to take a few questions, I think, before we move on or anything, unless you had any others that we didn't mention that you're like, oh, man, this one's a really good one.
No, not really. We kind of played around all the various things that I was thinking of.
Sure.
The main was, like, I think the main story I really want to see that we haven't been told is, like, how Rex and Anakin hooked up, because we see them already having a pretty strong bond.
Sure,
Like, in the first episode of the show, like, he gives a secret message while being mind-controlled to say something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Ventress is like, tell him this. And he goes, Anakin, come up here. And he goes, Anakin? He doesn't call me that, Like, they already have a rapport and stuff. So I'd really like to see how that started.
I did think about, like, Scorch and, like, the...
Republic Commandos.
Republic Commando kind of characters.
Delta.
But once again, like, I also put that in, like, the clone category where I'm like... I don't know. Clone Wars, like, Bad Batch, like they kind of cover on that a little bit, but we only see them when they're kind of like helping Empire stuff. Yeah. Like, what were they like before? Because I've never played Republic Commandos. So, like, all I have of the Republic Commandos, like Scorch and stuff, is that one time they delivered, like, the Jedi's body in Clone Wars.
Sure.
And then, which I think that was them, right? It was still them. And then what we've seen of them in, like, Bad Batch and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that could be cool.
So, but I also like, I like Bad Batch, so I don't know if I need that either.
Sure.
But that could also be a story in Clones or something,
I like those. I really like the idea of like Tales of the New Republic or like Tales of the First Order, maybe, where we could just kind of expand the sequel trilogy because, I mean, hey, when the prequels came out, everybody hated those too, but then we had 20 years of supplemental material that retroactively made them better. Why can't the sequels do the same thing?
That could be really cool. I like that.
Yeah. Tales of the Gonk.
Tales of the Gonk. Okay, Gonk. I don't know what kind of tales you have to tell, but they could be crazy. But let's see what's everyone say? Ideas for tales, but also like what you guys thought of the trailer or what questions you had for it. Will Be Gone said, "How did you feel about Tales of the Empire?" I personally thought it was undercooked a little, especially with Boris teasing Vader in it with her, but barely got anything. Excited for Underworld.
I'm gonna guess Barris.
Barris makes more sense. Undercooked, especially with Barris, was the one I was most excited for because she's been a question I've had, especially Melanie really liked Barris in Clone Wars, and then the betrayal thing happens, and we just don't really get any more of her. And I was always like, did she die in Order 66? Did she become an Inquisitor? What happened with her? So I mean, what they did there, and it also like they jumped some years ahead, right? When she's older by the end,
They do.
After that, and then seeing Tales of the Underworld, I know Melanie was like, because her dream is to have a story in some way that has Barriss, Ventress, and Ahsoka having to work together
Really?
in some kind of fashion.
Sure.
And I'm like, man, that would be so annoying for her, where it's like an old enemy and someone who betrayed me, and we have to work together. But I think that also might be a fun story too you could have. So
Gotcha.
I didn't. The Elspeth stories were the ones that didn't quite hit for me, but I also haven't rewatched them, so I might maybe rewatching them with more context from watching Ahsoka. Because did that come out before Ahsoka? I think, or was it after Ahsoka? The Tales of the Empire. Do you remember?
After.
Was it after?
Yeah, we met. Yeah.
Like,
Well, it was. I believe it was after, right? think
I
so.
forget the order of watching it, but
yeah, I'm very certain it was after. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like, was it undercooked for me? Only because there wasn't more. Like, I liked the Morgan Elsbeth stuff, but I wanted more. I liked the Bear stuff, but I wanted more. I think it brought some cool stuff, like the Mountain Clan, like the Good Witches.
Yeah,
I thought was a really cool addition to the lore. That's the thing with Barriss Offee is it was anticipated by the fandom so much for her to come back that I don't think anything would have satisfied everybody.
Sure.
And especially when it comes to these Tales series, like the Tales series, I think work the best when they are just kind of propping something up a little bit more. Whereas Morgan Elsbeth needs a lot more propping up for her to be like a very compelling character.
Sure.
She was, she had a lot more screen time in Ahsoka, but she's really more of a stepping stone to Thrawn and the Dathomirian witches in the other galaxy, as she is like a main character. Though she has a really cool duel, she has the blade of Towson, and she has a cool fight in the end. But I would want her to maybe develop a little bit more than what Tales can offer.
Sure, I get what you mean.
And then
like the Ahsoka one, we already had a lot of Ahsoka. Yeah. This just kind of fed a little bit. That one episode just added so much more to like one of the final moments of Clone Wars, And I was like, oh man, that made me tear up so much. We get to see her initial discovery. Like I like those adding to what I already know.
Sure.
But yeah, you're right. Morgan, I don't know a lot of. And then this here is just like it's seeding some bits that I'm like, okay, I think I get a little bit more, but it's not like you said. If I had more, it didn't have enough for me to like. Oh, now I'm really.
I would recommend to rewatch them though, especially now that we've read the Ascendancy trilogy.
Sure,
with that Thrawn scene, because it's a lot more in there.
that probably would be a thing too.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if there's more for Tales. New Gen Nerd, are there any bounty hunters you'd like to see in Tales of the Underworld, even as a small cameo? I, of course, love Imbo, but I also love... Hondo's a pirate.
Yeah.
Aura Singh.
What was Aura Singh doing on Boonta Eve? Did she have a bet?
Why was she there?
Yeah, what if she, I bet on Sebulba and Skywalker screwed her or something?
Or
that could be cool.
Or wasn't Aura Singh Tobias? Was that his name? Right? Solo? Didn't he kill Aura Singh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. Well, that was the
Tobias Beck, right?
Yeah, that was the story. He pushed her. He pushed her off a cliff.
Yeah. I don't know what happened there with that kind of stuff or whatever.
Beckett. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. You can pull the thumbs off a Gundar. Yeah.
So
okay, I can see that. Aura Singh.
I don't know if this is for Underworld, but
I'm gonna say Dengar, because there's this weird fan theory that there's this bounty hunter character from the sequel trilogy that he's robotic and he's cut himself up a bunch and he's changed and stuff, and he just has is that his name, Rothgar Ding?
People think it's Dengar.
People are like, this is Dengar. We think it's Dengar from so maybe you confirm that theory. I mean, we confirmed that Rex was the old guy on Return of the Jedi. Why don't we do this?
Okay.
And then you could bring back What's his name? Shaun of the Dead.
What, Simon Pegg? Or
Simon Pegg. Because he played him in the Clone Wars. Is his voice.
Oh, did he?
Have him be Dengar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, IG-88.
IG-88 would be cool, too. Yeah. That would be interesting. You do IG-88's story about taking on the Death Star.
Like, that's an episode
But
of,
it
like,
blew up right before he
Tales
could.
of the Bounty Hunters or whatever. Like, that could be a cool thing. Like, you watch it and you don't know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
You don't see all of that story. And then by the end of it, he's like, I have it. And it blows up. And you cut to Lando and you're like, woohoo.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
And it just ends.
Tales of the Mandalorians.
Tales of Mandalorians could be a really cool storyline. I like that a lot,
Ooh,
too.
a Satine story. Like young Satine and young Obi-Wan. Like trying to bring peace to Mandalore or something. You get Qui-Gon in there maybe. Somehow. That could be cool.
We haven't seen that story where,
Have it be a little
back
sexy.
then, when it's like, if you'd only said the word,
Right? Exactly. I want to see that.
Okay.
Tales from, or Confessions of the Jedi in that one.
He's confirmed to be at the Battle of Endor, but Nick Sant is still Nick Sant in canon. Who's Nick Sant? Is that guy?
Maybe it's that guy.
Is that the character that people are like, oh, look, that guy looks like Rex, only older?
I mean, if you asked me 2 years ago, I would have been able to tell you. I can't tell you now, but
So,
it
like-
sounds familiar.
So, like, Rex is at Endor, but he's not that guy that everyone says he's that
Yeah,
guy. Is that what you're
sure.
saying?
Yeah, I think so.
But
I wanted to show you Rothgar Ding as well, just to give you an idea of, like, could that be Dengar? Like a real screwed up Dengar? I mean, he's screwed up.
he is screwed
He is
up.
screwed up.
Rothgar Ding.
Yep.
And he's in the sequel trilogy?
Yep.
I don't remember him.
He's kind of in the background.
All right. I mean, that
Rise of
happens a lot,
Skywalker.
right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, there's a few questions and stuff. There's some fun ideas. Someone said Tales of Nia Nub. Nia Nub.
Nia Nub.
Nia Nub.
Yeah, okay, that could be cool.
Yeah.
He was in the sequel trilogy, too,
He
wasn't
was.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Look at that guy.
Yeah.
Do we have a picture of Dengar, too? Can we put them side by side, Gonk? Is that possible?
Do
We have the technology, Gonk?
Well, we did until you ripped out the cord.
Is that what that was for? Was that our Dengar pictures?
I didn't know we needed comparisons.
Comparison. Okay, that was the comparison cables.
I've been teaching Gonk not to rank things, and got rid of his-
Why would you do that? You didn't clear that with me.
I didn't think I had to.
All right.
Of my list of things that I don't clear with you, that's at my top of my ranking list.
All right. But yeah, that one's...
There's Dengar.
Huh.
Like, look at the chest. Don't look at the face. Don't look at anything else. The chest work is where it's at.
The chest.
Yeah, it's chest piece. It's kind of similar.
Chest piece. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, I get what you mean a little bit. It looks a little similar. I mean, and his face, like... his face could be that. I don't know what's under that, like, hat turban thing he has.
You
like,
don't?
I
idea.
don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
I saw another one. I think Nexus maybe said it. But if you were doing a Tales of, like, bring the chat back, Gonk. But yeah, what character would you pair alongside a Padme story for something like Tales of the Republic? So you do Tales of the Republic. One of them's Padme. Who's the other? Like, I feel like Mon Mothma is someone that you would go for, but we're getting a lot of Mon Mothma and
I
Andor.
love Mon
I don't know if I
Mothma.
need her there.
I always like Bale, but we get more Bale than a lot of other people too.
Yeah.
The ETs.
You love those ETs.
What about? Okay, this might be a little different, but it might work as Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Not necessarily focus on Jedi per se,
Per se.
right? It's a fall of Dooku, I suppose, or something.
Se. Yeah.
But was it? I'm trying to remember what her name was. Was it Bonteri? That was on the Separatist side that she would talk
Yeah,
to. That
Lux's
was
mom?
killed by Dooku. Was that who that one was? I know Bonteri was in there, but like, what if you took someone like that and you see them and why they joined the Separatist side, and you're seeing Padme in more of the Republic side of things too. So like, it's Tales of the Republic, but you're also getting a lot more of the Separatist kind of like understanding why the Separatists are where they are. And we get that a little bit in Clone Wars, but like maybe getting one
Okay.
person's viewpoint could also help that a little bit.
I like that. I mean, I could separately say Tales of the Separatists sounds freaking awesome.
That could be also
We
interesting.
could try to satisfy the heroes on both sides from the crawl of Episode 3 a little bit more. Like, show me good separatists fighting a corrupt Republic. Because
Yeah.
guess what?
Yeah.
The Republic is corrupt.
The Jedi were egotistical. They thought they knew everything. You
Yeah.
know, all this different stuff.
Like,
so,
have, like, Dooku be a hero to him or something? I don't know.
yeah. So, I don't know.
I like that.
That might be one.
That's
I don't
a good
know.
one.
Yeah, is there anyone else that you or chat thinks would be good to pair with Padme?
For Padme,
you know who you could do? Take 2 Naboo senators. And you have Sheev Palpatine and Padme Amidala.
How they both senated.
And that's your 2 senators of the Republic that you follow as far as like them.
You know, that's
senators.
super interesting because other than Episode 1, when you kind of see him, you don't get to see Palpatine out of power very much. He's almost always, I'm the most important Chancellor of the Republic, or I'm the Emperor of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
You almost never get to see him operate and do stuff as a lowly senator. That could be fun, even aside from the Sith stuff. Just seeing him manipulate and take control of people that think they are his peers, because every other time they are not his peers.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Yeah, I like that. I like Tales of the Republic, and it's Padme and Palpatine.
Yeah. That could be fun. I don't know.
That tickles me.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some ideas of tales, I think. We've talked about this longer than I thought we need to, or would, I guess. But
I mean,
it's been
we
fun
really should learn one day that there is no limit for us talking about Star Wars.
Sure, right?
Yeah.
So we do need to move into
We gotta move on.
the book we haven't even talked about yet, guys.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about that a lot, too. Chancellor Valorum? Oh, man, I see someone said that.
We'll go forever.
No, but like putting him as the Republic
know.
one, that
Yeah,
could be
that would
kind
be
of cool, too.
Yeah. Yep.
But, yeah, I don't know. I like Bonteri and the Separatist stuff now a lot, too, because I just like seeing, like Nexus said, I've said it a lot, too, where it's like the Jedi should have been on both sides of the war.
It should have been.
You know? I know it's a
agree.
war, and they were like with the Republic, but that
Yeah.
wasn't what the Jedi should have been.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have been with the Republic. They should have been keepers of peace in the galaxy. You
I
know?
think that
and the High Republic
works-
is showing their fall of joining the Republic and trying to
Sure.
be like peacekeepers, but they're doing it for a faction. You know?
I think that works for a more, not necessarily Andor-like tone, but Lucas always had the philosophy of like children need to know who the good guy and the bad guy are. And if you have Jedi on both sides, they might be like confused and be like, "Oh, well, maybe it's good to be bad sometimes." But again, that's like
Sure.
maybe trying to make it a little more adolescent. Maybe you could do something that's a little more mature and do something.
Yeah,
more.
because like even still, like in the idea of things being split, it doesn't mean that everyone on your side is good.
Yeah.
You know, like there's bad people on both sides. There can be good
Sure.
people on both sides. Like some of that stuff can happen. Where like what Bonteri was after wasn't exactly the same things Count Dooku was trying to do.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see some of those kind of stories too. All right. Well, we probably need to move on to Thrawn.
Thrawn
Right.
Ascendancy, Lesser Evil.
Yeah.
I suppose we should, Aaron.
We need to talk about that a bit.
It is
here.
time. So, if you've been following along, this is our 6th Thrawn book. We had the
It is.
first trilogy, which, from what I understand, came like one at a time, right? Like Legend of Korra, it's like, you guys get a season. All right, do another season now. Do another book now. And then for this one, he was like, do you want to do 3 books? Do 3 books. So he has a
Okay.
lot more of an interconnected story in this latter trilogy.
Yeah, but well, because that makes more sense then, because each
Yeah.
book that we read in the original trilogy, when I was done with it, I was like, okay, I see what we did here. This
Exactly,
is cool.
yeah.
And they all had kind of a wrap up.
Yeah.
And the last book was not my favorite of the Thrawn books.
And it was like a middle.
It was it was a middle of the
Yeah.
of the story here. It also like, I really like the Chiss. I think I really like Thrawn. Thrawn I really like. I also really like Arlani.
Arlon is sweet.
Arlani's awesome.
Yeah.
And there's a few other characters that I've grown to really enjoy in this as well. But
I was very curious about what you thought of this book, by the way.
I
As I was reading, I was kind of like, what do Aaron think about this?
like this one a lot more than the last book.
Me too. Yeah.
It's the longest book I think we've done.
It's
Yeah.
I think
like-
it is
it was like-
the longest Star Wars book, other than another Timothy Zahn book.
Really?
Yeah.
There's another Timothy Zahn book? I didn't. I thought we just finished them all. I
No,
thought he only wrote about Thrawn.
He did. There's a book that he did in the old Legends called Outbound Flight that this book references.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't
We'll
know
get
that.
into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, as an overall kind of statement, I thought that the story with this was, I had more enjoyment, I think, with this one.
Yeah.
I felt like there was more Thrawn maybe in this one than there was in the last book.
Sure. Yeah. We have a very expanded cast of characters in this
Yeah.
trilogy, and Thrawn sometimes would fall on the wayside. I get
Yeah,
you.
and also in this one, we had a little bit more Arlani, which we had established in the previous books. We had a lot more Samacro, I think.
Yeah.
Especially working with I gotta look it up. Thalia.
Thalia.
Thalia. I always want to put an S in there.
I know.
I don't know if that's because of Thras or what the reason is, but Thalia is
Thalius.
Thalius. We had a lot more of her and some Macro,
Sure.
which I like that as well. And more story within figuring out who Jixtus is.
Yeah.
Right? Which I'm like,
the Grisk.
okay, this is really cool. I like this. But also, we don't really get the Grisk.
You don't.
Like, we don't get a lot of Grisks, really.
I mean,
Jixtus,
the mystery
you know?
is really cool. The idea that the Grisk are that formidable and you don't know what they look like. Right?
I don't know.
They're hooded or masked. Like, no one knows what a Grisk looks
Until I
like.
see a picture, I probably will do a terrible job at telling you what this thing looks like, regardless of what they say in
they-
the book,
you know,
too.
they-
So. But yeah,
They
Jixtus,
don't want you to know what they
Jixtus
look
has his
like.
hood. He's wearing
Yeah.
a mask all the time. Like, you don't really know what's
But it
under
makes
there.
me think, like, what if they're just chiss?
I mean, it's possible. They could be anything,
Well,
you know?
there's like other chiss. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, I'm in the same boat where I like this better than the last book. Now that we've completed this trilogy, I think I can appreciate everything a little bit more. It's still not necessarily my favorite, just because this is almost kind of like the Mace Windu book. It was a little more science fiction and science fantasy for me, which isn't bad. It's just not my favorite part of Star Wars. I want a little bit more fantasy in Star Wars. So having Thrawn as the hook to keep me interested in this did still work with me throughout all three books. But some of the other characters, like there'd be times where I'd come to a character's name and be like, okay, I've heard this name. Who's this person again? I have to go look it up. Oh, okay, that's why I know, because they changed their name.
There is that happens.
There's
it
a lot of
can mess with me a
syllables,
bit.
in each name,
And people get promotions and different titles and stuff too. Trying to understand the Chiss ascendancy.
Nexus. I gave notes.
I know Nexus.
Exactly, that's what I want, notes for a book. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much,
I have to
Nexus.
take my notes, and then I have to look at Nexus's notes, and then I'm like just listening to the book, trying to keep it all in my head.
I know, it's hard to
So-
stay invested when I have to.
With everything that like I think this does that hinders me personally as far as like picturing it and getting the image in my head. And I've talked about that, and I don't want to have to talk about it every time. But
Sure.
I enjoyed this one so much more than the last one.
Yeah. What the hell was that noise?
Sounds like a train. So
A
shoot your
train in
guys.
space?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what it remind me of. There's something outside. I don't know.
I don't
what's
know.
Outside.
It's a weird noise. I don't know if Gonk picks it up or not.
Yeah, Gonk. I don't know.
Yeah.
Ask the captain. But I mean, the story of the characters I really liked. I enjoyed Thras, which
Yeah.
I believe it was him who was in most of the memories in this one.
Yes. Yes, sir.
And the build up with him and Thrawn and like the brothers thing I thought was really interesting.
Uh-huh.
Just that general story all the way up into the end.
Yeah.
Because Thras is gone and he wants to like try to just kind of reflect on his brother.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
And the way that the Chiss are with I'm an actual blood cousin.
I'm a cousin,
and you
but-
were taken from another family, so you're accepted, but you're not really family.
It's almost
but
like
you're
a
kind of family.
It's like the mob, right? Like you can be a made man in a family, but you're not really a part of the family. But you're so awesome that we see you as it now, right? And these are just kind of like feudal families fighting each other or working together.
Yeah.
Like the ascendancy is still pretty cool in terms of like, hey, we don't attack. People don't say attack us first. Like
Sure.
I can.
They say that, but they also want to keep everyone out.
Agreed.
Right?
Yeah.
And they were really mad that Thrawn like made friends with other aliens without them being able to choose that.
Sure.
So they're also very like, leave us alone. But if you come this way, we're gonna take you
I
out.
get it. I'm just saying, leave us alone is a good place to start.
Sure.
for
yeah.
for a galactic power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
But no, I really did. I enjoyed the book. What were we just talking about before that though? I had another point. Thrask. So I mentioned Outbound Flight, which is another Timothy Zahn book from back in the day, and it was actually Nexus. I don't know if you know this, or someone can look it up, but I think it had like a tease of the Yuvin Vong in that one as well. But Thrask is a character from there. He's actually Thrawn's brother. They're real
he is his
brothers
brother
in that one. I
'Cause-
believe so.
okay.
It's been 20. I don't know how many years since that book came out, but it's been a long time since I've seen that book or read that book. That was back when I was reading books when I was young. But anyway, they were actually real brothers. So I like that, much like what Dave Filoni will bring stuff into new canon. Like Timothy Zahn also brought in a character he wrote into his new continuity of Chiss and kind of made them brothers again. I thought that was a really sweet thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I like I said, I liked Thras and Thrawn's relationship, the growth, the by the end, I mean, I was sad for Thrawn on the story of it all and stuff. So I did like that. I also really enjoyed Simacro.
Yeah.
Like Simacro spends so much time where like I think he trusts Thrawn, but he doesn't trust Thrawn sometimes. But he also has his own issues with Thalia, Thalius, where, well, she's a spy. And like we had in like, I don't know, the first book where, who was it? The one guy was like, tell me anything Thrawn does.
Sure,
I can't think of.
Tell me anything Thrawn does.
Yeah, exactly. He's like the Syndiclair or whatever it was. I have his name on here. I'm trying to find it.
Thurfian.
Thurfian. Yes, that's it. So like he's like, I know she's spying.
Yeah.
Like there's been that story I think over the course of this trilogy, and like we finally get to it. It's like, okay, look, I'm gonna tell you this. It's like I knew it. It's like no, but I'm on Thrawn's side and I'm trying to help him because like she also had like the old Chiss. Shoot.
I can't remember the names. You can't answer this movie.
I keep skipping the names. I keep trying to think of the titles.
Oh,
he's like the
sure.
patriarch.
The patriarch,
right?
of the family,
Before I think
speaker.
Thurfian, like before he keeps getting boosted and stuff too. Like whenever he talks, he's like, hey, we brought Thrawn, and I want you to take care of him and watch out for him. So like it's funny getting to see what happens with her, and then seeing like Simacro being like, I'm gonna get her. I know I'm gonna get her, and you're like, oh man, I wish they would work together. And then by the end, like you have them kind of finally opening up. And there's like this element where it's like, well, I can't disobey an order, but I also have to take care of the Skywalkers, and like he's like, so we're gonna go and do this, and he has that kind of.
We're gonna go and do this.
I like that he's like he'll bend the rules but still follow the rules to like the way that it can work for him, and I really thought that like their I don't know, their relationship as it went on, I also enjoyed. In this book a lot.
My favorite. I don't know if you had anything to expand on that, but my favorite stuff was the Skywalker stuff this time. Like,
okay.
There's some incredibly dark stuff when it comes to the Skywalkers.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, first Thrawn just sticking that dude in his Skywalker's chamber so that
the Magus,
the Magus,
Magi's?
yeah, because we have Cheery. And her, what's supposed to be force powers that go away, right? Like the female Chiss, they get these force powers when they're young, but they go away, and we don't really know exactly what happens. But we have some really interesting revelations in this book, with Cheery like developing powers,
sure,
right?
Well, and Thalia also, like at one point, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something where she's like, "Oh, well, what about this?" And he's like, "Well, I never told you that." It's like, "Wait, you never told me that." How did I know that? I swear you told me that. Yeah. And like there's an element there where it's like, wait, so is her power diminished, or is it just like it has weakened, she hasn't been using like what's going on with that element there? It's still something there.
And we have this revelation, I can't remember the name of the character right now. But it turns out someone is responsible for erasing the Skywalker's minds. And it's dark, and it's you're doing that to children.
Yeah.
And it's really it really makes you think about like how the Jedi treat children in terms of like, oh, you're too old because you have too much experience.
Yeah.
Whereas the
you have too much connection to stuff.
You have too much connection to stuff. Where the Chiss don't really they're not spoiled for Force sensitives, so they have to like take what they have and mold them into something useful.
Yeah. Let's remove your memories.
They take those children's memories. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, I wanted more of it.
Sure.
Especially with the revelation of something that, Thalius had forgotten. Right?
Thalius forgot?
Oh, I'm sorry. What's her name?
Wait, not Cheery. I'm assuming you're talking about when she went to the other planet,
yeah.
right? Because I can't remember what that person's name was, but they get to the revelation. Because like we had back in, was it book 1 or was it the original trilogy? At some point, Thrawn mentions about having a sister.
He does.
A sister? Where's his sister at?
Yeah, what's the name? Nexus got it. Borkia. Borica.
Yep. That doesn't sound very chissy, but we'll go with it.
Yeah.
But Thalia goes and talks to someone, and I like a lot of this. I mean, I don't like the Skywalker stuff because, like you said, it's really dark.
Yeah. It's the more
but
engaging part of the story for me personally.
Sure. Well, with that, at one point, like she went to the planet.
Yeah.
We had that with the reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, wait a minute. By the end of the book, I was like, wait, did I miss a thing? Or is that just where we ended with that? Like, we just didn't do.
Yeah.
I kept going like, and I was like, and I started trying to go back. I'm like, what chapter was that in? Like, where? Yep. I kept waiting for more to come back. And then I started going back. I'm like, did I miss something? Or what happened with that? Because I kept waiting for it to come back up, and it didn't come back up. So, but I guess if it was in the original trilogy that we had him mention his sister and not knowing where she went or whatever, like, I guess it would make sense that he wouldn't have found her yet, or that she wouldn't have told him, or given that we have a huge battle and stuff, and then things start kind of going a little crazy after that, like, there's a conversation of, like, we won't see Thrawn again.
Yeah.
Like, maybe she just never got to talk to him and tell him anything, or maybe it was better not to tell him, or, I don't know.
Sure.
But I was kind of like, after that revelation moment, I was like, ooh, what are we going to do with this? And I was like, did we just drop it? Are we not doing it? So that was my only thing where I was like, well, what about the sister thing?
From what I understand, like, I don't think Timothy Zahn says he'll never write any more Thrawn books anymore, but he's done for now. So it could be one of those things where he just kind of like left some stuff to cover later if he wants to. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I felt the same. I was like, that meeting's going to be cool. Nothing.
Yeah, what are we going to do with that?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I do want to say that on the next note that I really kind of had, I really enjoyed a lot of the combat aspects.
Sure.
Like, these aren't combats like gun battles or lightsaber fights. It's all like space combat stuff.
You really have to visualize, and for me, I had to just kind of like take like a bird's eye view nest to try to understand the strategy. And stuff sometimes.
and I turned everything into like Star Destroyers and stuff. I was just trying to picture what kind of stuff we had here with that too.
I wish.
But the way things worked, how Thrawn is, like, sometimes I also feel like I wanted Thrawn to fail because he always succeeded, and I kept thinking like, oh, what if we see him fail and that's why he gets exiled, or what if we see him like, what's his lowest point but he never has one. He's always getting better and he's always doing well, and he's like always right. It's like Sherlock Holmes, and like you always like, oh man, he's not gonna do well, but he always is ahead of everybody. He's always winning. But there were some things that I really liked in the combat. There was one of the fights where they were like after these one ships, and he like chased them into these nets that he shot ahead, or like they shot some missiles and then he like short hyper jumped to them and then talked to them, and they started wanting fighting, and he's like, all right, if you want to fight, let's fight. And like he anticipated them wanting to fight, and then the missiles he shot like 10 minutes ago showed up, and I was like,
it's really fun stuff.
I love these moments that have like these creative ways of him like, I'm going to beat you guys, and you don't even know that you've lost already. And it really kind of reflects to, like, Rebels and things.
It does.
It makes me excited for live-action Thrawn and, like, some other combats that we can see of him, because he's so creative with that.
I think it lends itself to the book medium pretty well, too, because if you're describing a lightsaber fight, well, what are you going to do? Like, okay, he goes for the upper left shoulder, and then he went for a knee, and then he did this, Like, you have to kind of, like, play around with how you describe it, whereas you're describing military, armament and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe a little better, more suited for book as opposed to visual. Like everything else.
There's a few times where like they would talk about like what the weapon was, and I'm like, I don't really know what that is.
Yeah.
But if you just called it a missile or whatever, I'm like, I have a better visualization of that.
Yeah.
But no, I thought the final battle was really cool too. Like just all the combat aspects that they wrote in this book.
Agreed.
I really liked. Even not Lakinda anymore. She's Zakinda?
I think so.
Is that what it was?
I kept thinking of Lacrissa from Baldur's Gate.
Oh yeah,
she's one of the tieflings.
But Zainda,
Zelinda.
Her and Roscoe. I think I have it written down here, but like there was a combat that they had, and like they had like there's a few times where like having to fake combats through the trilogy. There's a few times they fake combats, and I loved how a lot of those worked. And she also was like a real smart combatant.
She was,
and I believe it was her and her ship that was like, we'll take the hits for you while, we can't win against this guy, I think it was Jixtus, but we can buy you guys time for one of those guys to get here. And a lot of those I thought were really good. And the way that the people around Thrawn, like, worked together, even though like a lot of them are all different families or just the Chiss like military group as opposed to being part of like an actual family, they've like ascended to the point of like we are just for the defense of the Chiss, and like having them all kind of work around Thrawn, but like Thrawn and Arlani are also kind of peers and picture things really well too, and notice things sometimes at the same time. And I just the peer aspect I thought was really good, because especially when we get Thrawn in the Empire, I feel like no one's his peer. I don't maybe Palpatine, you know what I mean? But like when we see him with the Empire, with other Imperials, like these guys are all idiots. Like no one, you get Constantine, who's like, why aren't you listening to this guy? Because he clearly knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
you know, like
I mean. Power scale next to Palpatine's tough because Palpatine can see the future. Like you have to give Thrawn like a hand, like you have to handicap him somehow to have like a good, like competitive bout.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
Maybe if they play like hollow chess or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were some moments too, especially at the end, not on the combat side, but like talking about Arlani. We get to, I mean, eventually we have to get to the point of exiling Thrawn to the planet, or at least explaining why he's on that planet. In the original trilogy, he talks about being exiled, and I was always like, is this real? Yeah. Thrawn usually doesn't lie, but maybe he would bend to truth to be able to get to where he wants to go, you know? So I was never sure what was going to happen with that, but we get to him being exiled from the Chiss. The Patriarch's like, you're going to be out. You know, I think they were going to strip him of a myth, but they didn't strip him of the myth. But they're going to exile him to live on a planet for like the rest of his days. Yeah. But it kind of seems like one of those things where like, well, we'll put you out there, but like, you know, maybe if we really need him, we'll go back and get him. But at least now we'll know where he is.
Like Napoleon.
Yeah. And the one thing I really liked was Arlani. She talks with I don't remember who she's talking to. Could be anybody. But whoever she talks to towards the end of the book starts telling about the plans and stuff. Oh, starts with the B. Anyway, when talking with him, Thrawn and him had kind of come up with this idea where it's like, well, we you know, I met this General Skywalker. There's something going on over there. We don't know about, you know, the Grisk and what's going on with them. So we're going to go over here. We're going to find out if either A, they would be useful in our own combat that we're going to have over here, or B, if they're going to be a threat that we should like make sure we're aware of and know what's going on. And I liked a lot of that stuff that they were telling Arlani. Yeah. But there was a moment when telling, it's like, we really didn't need another Chiss over here talking loudly, complaining about why Thrawn was gone. And she goes, who, me? And it was so sassy and sarcastic from what I felt like we usually had for Arlani that it made me chuckle.
I think she's earned that sass throughout the books.
And I really, Keith, thank you, Nexus. That was who it was.
Yeah, that's right.
And I really enjoyed that aspect of just getting a moment with Arlani that kind of caught me off guard for some reason, I guess, just being a little bit more, who are you talking about? And I thought that was really funny.
I think if we never get many of these characters back, she might be the one that I mourn the most.
Yeah. I do want to, was it in the second book when Eli Vanto, I want more of, because I liked him a lot too. Was it him in the second book? Was he in the first and then he was in the second and he wasn't in the third? Because there was a point in the book, like, where'd Eli? I wanted more Eli, but he went to Arlani. Yeah. I want, after having these stories with Arlani, I kind of want to re-go through that book and get Arlani, cool. You know, in, I guess, a chronological order aspect.
Sure.
I saw where, it's in the first and the third book. He's not in the second book. Yeah. I knew he wasn't in something, and then like I kind of missed him in this, but I'm like, it makes sense he's not here. He was with the Empire.
And to your point, rereading it might make me enjoy it even more, just because I enjoyed Star Wars because I rewatched it, not because I watched it once.
This trilogy is definitely a book series that like I would like to go through again. And I think
now that I have an idea of what everything is.
Yeah, and trying to see where all the connections kind of go and what's happening with some parts of the story. I have a better idea of who some of these characters are. Yeah. And I think it would do really well for me. I usually try to go through a book twice. This one was too big, I couldn't. And I feel like I started this one like right after the last Gonk. Yeah. And I finished it like last weekend. Like it took me a while to get through as long as this book was, but I think Arlani ended up becoming one of my favorites, and I liked her in the original trilogy of books that we read too when she showed up there. But I like her more now, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing I want to talk about, but I wanted to ask you on, but But if you have another thing you want to say, I'll let you do that first.
The only
but-
thing I really have left is just talking about the transition from this characterization of Thrawn to our Rebels characterization of Thrawn.
Okay. I mean, we can work on that then, too, because one of the things I do want to talk about was Thrawn at the end of this book.
Yeah.
So if you want to
Well,
go
I
on
just,
your thoughts or whatever first.
As I was reading, we've read these 2 trilogies now of Timothy Zahn, the guy who created Thrawn, and he's doing this knowing that he's appeared in Rebels now, and he has a very specific way that he is in Rebels, and in my opinion, he's a little bit more evil. He's a little bit more will do anything to get something done, and I didn't really see that of this Thrawn until this book, or at least closer to it. Like, he has a moment or a couple of moments where it's like he will go too far to get his goal. Not quite orbital bombardment on a city like we saw in Rebels or whatever, but it's a little closer at least in this book for me.
Sure.
But in terms of like the end, what were you wanting to cover?
One of the things I liked or didn't like. So the end of the book, we have the big battle that happens, right?
Yeah.
There's an element through the very end of the last book. They talk about the weapon Starflash.
Starflash, yes.
And then in this book too, there's like talking about elements of that weapon, kind of getting an idea of what it is,
what it can do to a star, and
yeah,
that type of thing.
Yeah, they go over like how bad this weapon is, and they kind of like they vaulted it and stuff. And at one point, there's a part where like Thrawn is needing something from the vault, and at the end of the book, like in the fight, you find out what he has as his secret weapon was he got a gravity well.
Yeah.
And it's like keeping people from being able to hyperspace
the
away
Republic, yeah.
and kind of helping them in their fight, right?
Yep.
In the gravity well he got in
The Republic,
the other book, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I forget which one it was, but whatever. When he went and saw Skywalker, right? That was the thing he took.
Alliances,
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think.
But the gravity well later on when he's talking to I think it's Barkeef again. Barkeef is like, man, when you said you were gonna go to the vault, I thought you were gonna get Starflash, and like his response to it was like, oh, I would have if I thought I needed it, and then I was like, oh, okay. He's like, but I didn't think it was gonna be anything useful in this fight. But if I thought that that's what I needed to win this fight for the Chiss, like he had a line where he said like, I would have used it to protect the Chiss. I would have done whatever the cost would have been. I will pay it. Like
That's
like
you wrote it down. That's the line I was talking about when it came to like, oh, I think I see Rebels Thrawn a little bit more there.
yeah, especially if you're looking at the idea of like, well, that's how he does it for the Chiss.
Yeah.
So whatever the cost in the Empire.
Yeah.
For these other people that maybe aren't the same things that he's protecting. Like if his loyalty is really for the Chiss and I have to appease the Emperor, I have to make sure I'm doing things he wants, I will do whatever it takes to make sure I achieve my goals so I can protect the Chiss.
Sure.
And if that's how he is, like him being more of an antagonist than he is a protagonist for the Chiss in these stories, I think fits really well with that. Because like there was a lot of times where I'm like, man, looking at him as a protagonist, like sometimes things don't gel well to me. But I think that little bit there, like, if we could get in his head and understand more during Rebels times and stuff of, like, what are his actual goals?
I agree.
I think maybe it gels a little bit more than I thought it would have.
I think if you want to read into it, you could say that, like, that's the influence of working for someone like the Emperor does to somebody. Like, you might think, oh, yeah, Thrawn and Palpatine, they could be peers, and Palpatine's going to be like, okay, sure. I literally can use the dark side to influence those under me, Like, it could just be that just Thrawn's nature of being in the Empire makes him more that way, just by the nature of the veil of the dark side being so thick in the rule of the Empire. I also recognize that I made a mistake. The gravity well is from someone else. The Republic was the shield generator they were talking about. But, yeah, the gravity well was alluded to in the first novel where Thrass went missing.
Okay. All right. Yeah, after you said, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember he took something. So, okay, I see. Yeah, and I saw that, too, from that, so I was going to make that, too. But no.
You could, like, try to massage it a little bit and saying, like, like just being under the sway of the Empire, forever will it dominate your destiny, that type of thing. Like, he's not as good-hearted as he thinks he is when he's under a fascist state.
Sure, yeah. He's not needing to try to protect all these people.
Yeah.
Right? He might be trying to appease the Emperor to have an ally to help him against the Grisk, to help protect the Chiss, maybe,
Sure.
or, just trying to, like, find more of the weaknesses of the Empire so that if they're going to be an issue, if they're going to be someone, because there's a lot of times where I get the feeling that Palpatine is also trying to kind of prod at what the Chiss are and what they can do, and like maybe we could go that way, like he wants to control the galaxy.
He wants to control everything.
What's beyond the galaxy that he could
It
control?
probably
too,
bugs him. There's people out there that think they're not under his sway.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I don't know. There was that element there. Like it felt so cold of Thrawn when so much of this trilogy, I didn't get that from him.
Yeah, I agree.
And like it got there, and
you didn't like that part you were saying? Or?
Well, I say as a don't like because I'm like that's very bad guy.
Oh, okay, I understand. Gotcha.
Like I said, I think it works really well with Rebels and some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing him do some pretty bad things.
Sure.
And we didn't necessarily see him do. He didn't use that weapon, but he's saying he would have if he thought he needed it to win.
Yeah.
So like when you get there to Lothal, and he needs to win.
Yeah.
Well, what am I going to do? You have that. What's my odds? Okay, I'm going to destroy everybody out here until you open it up. And if you're good guys, you're not going to want me to do that, right?
Yeah.
Ezra, you're going to come here on my ship and talk to the Emperor, right? Because if not, I'm killing everybody. Like, that's a Thrawn who will do anything at all costs, and he will pay it. Like, I think that fits more for me. And I'm curious live-action Thrawn after the Ahsoka series, like, into another Ahsoka season or more movies or whatever they do with it. I want to know his goal.
Yeah.
Now after the Emperor's gone, what is he doing? Why is he wanting to go with the, working with Night Sisters or the, taking this undead army or whatever it is he has? Like, what is he wanting to do when he gets back? And like, what's the overall goal he has? Because I always feel like he's a man with goals. He always knows what he's doing. He has plans all the time.
He feels like he's serving some purpose, but it doesn't necessarily feel like it is to rule over others. I don't know. I think that he got to the point where he just enjoyed competition so much that he just wants to be the best at this. So I don't know. He gets obsessive, especially in Ahsoka. It was funny. Like after I read the book, I was going around like looking at like some reviews and stuff, and so many people were like, "I cannot wait to see how this factors into the upcoming live-action debut with Ahsoka." And I'm like, didn't really factor into.
It didn't really factor into that. No,
not really.
Not really. But also, a lot of it was about trying to get him back to our galaxy.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see.
Yeah.
What that's like. But the other thing that was interesting was like after having that moment and him saying that, like one of the next things that happened was like, here's a ring, and I'm going to give you this. Yeah. And it was such an emotional moment of him getting back this ring, that it rehumanized him after him having this like real terrible kind of like I'll do whatever it takes. Yeah. And I don't know. It's just it's interesting. And you usually don't see Thrawn be emotional. No. He's usually fairly just I don't know, emotionless. I don't know what other word I want to use, but restrained, yeah.
He doesn't put
analytical.
A lot of effort into it.
But like the ring is related to the snake symbol thing, right? Like I think we talked about it last book or something too.
Yeah, it is the symbol he will later put on his Star Destroyer.
Yeah,
the Chimera.
Yeah, so
and we see that in the Ahsoka series. Now we know,
and it came from this novel.
So
see. So
the twin snake symbol.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to have some more of these moments with Thrawn because like. Those seem like more personal things there, and I liked getting that.
Yeah,
I didn't like not getting the sister stuff, but hopefully we get that again in the future.
I don't think Timothy Zahn, with how much effort he put into the world building of the Chiss Ascendancy, will drop it. He'll probably come back to it, and Star Wars loves him, so I think that he'll get the chance if he wants to do it eventually. What's going to happen after the Heir to the Empire movie? Or the Grogu Mandalorian movie, which I'm assuming is Heir to the Empire.
Yeah, is that connected to that? Yeah. I've heard the movie was next. Then I heard there's a season 2 of Ahsoka, and then maybe a movie after that. Or is the Grogu Mandalorian connect? I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're doing. So
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
But just in terms of I don't know if you have anything else for this book, but in terms of this trilogy, like I do think a reread would benefit me just now that I've read this one, kind of understanding, last book was a middle chapter. Don't think about it in terms of the middle chapter from the previous thing.
Yeah.
Think about it in terms of like the Two Towers. Like on its own, it's cool, but I don't understand what's happening.
Yeah. Well, because the second book in the last one was, I think, the Vader one, right?
Yeah.
The Vader and Anakin, like, back and forth. And, like, by the end of it, I'm like, oh, man, I love that story. That was probably one of my favorites with Thrawn and
Well,
Vader
you also
and
had
all
so
that
much
stuff, and
grounding foundation.
yeah, I did.
There's almost no grounding foundation in this last trilogy.
Sure.
You know?
No, not for me.
Everything is new.
Yeah.
Like the names, like I'll forget as I read them. You know, I could be like, I could say a name and then close the book. I'm like, what was it? Crap. And I do agree in the sense of like, when I read books in other eras, especially ones that I know visually really well, it is so much easier to imagine what the author is trying to tell you, as opposed to here where like everything is kind of brand new. But especially in terms of like, I don't know why it's really important for me to know what the silhouette of a ship is. For me to really like imagine what it's like, and you just can't do that sometimes. So the order is Mando movie, then Ahsoka season 2, and then Filoni's film.
Okay, that's the order.
So Mando movie and Filoni's film is not the same thing, right?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
No, because I don't think the Mando movie was what they talked about at the last Celebration when they said about Filoni working on a new movie.
Yeah.
I thought that was implying the next one, but maybe not, and maybe they changed some. I don't know. They changed stuff a lot, so it's hard to tell. The Mando's directed by Favreau.
Yeah, I think the movie is theoretically just like a season 3, but movie.
Season 4.
Yep, you're right.
Right. Okay.
4.
I was like, okay.
You're right.
So yeah, so like whenever we had
I was thinking
Celebration,
of Ahsoka.
when they did Celebration, they said that there was a Filoni movie they were working on.
Yep.
There was the New Jedi Order with Rey, and then there was like the way back First Jedi kind of story.
Yeah.
And so this one now, the Grogu Mandalorian story, is a new one that they've put in there too. So, all right. I do want to see if there's any questions or anything. There's some things that I know that, like, going through this, I've either forgotten or I didn't pick up right away. We didn't even talk about what's his name? Kalori?
Yeah.
Like he was like another, like he was like a Skywalker, but not a Skywalker.
Yeah.
And like his story I thought was interesting because he was like working a lot with Jixtus, but like kind of in the middle of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I thought his story was kind of interesting.
Sure.
And by the end of it, I was like, oh, good. Yeah, shoot him. So, but I'm curious on any thoughts or anything that maybe we missed that, anyone who read the book or anything that was like, oh, man, did you guys catch this stuff or did you like this? But there's definitely a lot of stuff that I'm sure we could touch on. Nexus just sent one in and says, saddest part of this trilogy is how good friends Thrawn and Arlani were. And he reckons he'll be back very soon after his exile, but gets sucked into the Empire. I mean, yeah, he says, like, I think he says, like, 6 months, maybe a year.
He gets sucked into the Empire, then he gets sucked into a space whale, and then he gets sucked into a new galaxy.
Yeah, he
He's
gets
pretty
absorbed
far
into
away
it. Like,
from
how
his
long's it
old
been?
friend.
And when Arlani sees him again, treason. It's been, I don't know how long, years-wise, of him being in the Empire. And when Arlani sees him again in Thrawn treason, the relationship is just gone.
Sure, yeah.
That is a very sad thing because I do feel like she was there wanting Thrawn not to be exiled, and then here's what the reason is and stuff, and it's kind of more accepting of it, and it is a very sad moment there.
Yeah, definitely is.
Alice says, as we just finished Thrawn books, what about Tales of Ascendancy, focusing on the families or Arlani, or even Eli Vanto? That could be kind of cool. I do like that.
I would always love more Eli Vanto.
Anything visual for me to be able to see like what they do artistically, and then I can pull that for whenever I read these books of the Chiss Ascendancy and have like, that's what one of their, that's what the Gray Shrike.
Yes, the Gray Shrike.
That's what the Gray Shrike looks like. That's what the man, I wrote down more of the ship names and stuff too, but they escape me in the moment. But like getting to see more of those, and I think that would be really cool.
Speaking of more Eli Vanto, I also, when I was looking up some reviews, I saw some people were talking about when the guy from Expanse that plays Amos, I can't remember his name right now, but he was cast in Ahsoka.
Yeah.
And he ends up playing
Enoch.
Enoch. But people were like, that's Eli Vanto. And I was going like, that would be kind of cool having him play like, Eli Vanto.
That could be cool. How did he get there?
What?
How did Eli Vanto get to the Enoch thing?
Well, no, people were just speculating because they announced that actor was going to be in Ahsoka. They were trying to figure out who he could possibly play.
Oh, so before
it was before it came out. Yeah, like I said, like a lot of the reviews are from 3 years ago for this book,
Sure.
So this is people speculating, and I just, because I didn't see it back then, I saw it now. People being like, I bet you he's playing Eli Vanko. Like, if I'm wrong, I'll eat my shirt. that type of thing. So I don't really like it. I don't really go out and look at a lot of discussions about stuff coming out now, but I kind of like going back about stuff that I'm reading now that happened then, and you see these little like time capsules of speculation.
I get you. It's like I don't like to look at things for movies or shows, but like after I'm done, like maybe I'll go back and look now, and you see like speculations maybe that were happening early on in the season or something,
theories that never came to pass.
Yeah,
you'd be like that's
a
cool,
neat
though.
idea. I like that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I get you.
Okay. I'll touch on Nexus here, who also said, also in Thrawn, treason. 17 years later, Arlani tells Thrawn the ascendancy is on the brink of civil war, so things must be rough in Thrawn's absence.
Well, shocker.
I mean, that's what Jixtus was pushing, right? He was pushing civil war, and it almost happened. Like, he was getting close.
He was good at what he did. If it wasn't for Thrawn, he probably could have done it.
Yeah.
It's not like those guys aren't looking for excuses to fight. I feel like sometimes.
Yeah, so they're so against each other back and forth. So,
but they had that unifying philosophy. But yeah, good trilogy. Looking forward to the next Thrawn thing we get, which I'm assuming is going to be the movie.
At
eventually.
least Ahsoka season 2.
Yeah, I would say so.
Maybe not Grogu and Mando.
Maybe not.
Unless, I mean, the thing you could have is Grogu and Mando see Thrawn arriving in our galaxy and has to deal with that, while Ahsoka season 2 is dealing with what's happening over there and then them getting back, maybe, because they have to get out of there.
Sure.
So like you could kind of combine those a little bit, maybe, but at the same time, like maybe not do that. People might complain about like, man, why is the next Mandalorian stuff happening in Book of Boba? Yeah, right. And I was like, well, okay, don't mix your peanut butter and chocolate. It's not good. Keep it separate. So, but yeah, I enjoyed this. I did end up liking this by the end with what we got of Thrawn and getting to see more of getting a little bit more of him and how he's in Rebels and how he's in live action. And I'm a little bit more. When we talked about the last trilogy, sometimes we were talking about like this trilogy of books don't seem to really fit as well with like what we see in Rebels. Yeah. But I think now we get a little bit more of that. Sure. So, and maybe some of that built over time of I was gonna say Thrawn, of Zahn. Writing them and then going in like, oh, I got to do a trilogy. Let me really kind of, what do I want to do? And then he kind of like
develop over a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So that could be. 'Cause he also like writing those other books. I mean, he was a little bit more limited in like where he was putting that, right? Like, well, Thrawn's here in Rebels, so he'll leave here. So this takes place over like this week.
Yeah. He has all new characters he can play with.
Yeah. He can do a lot more with that. But no, real fun. I enjoyed it. And I look forward to more Thrawn. I mean, Thrawn's become one of my favorite characters since Rebels started. Yeah. How did this compare? You read the Heir to the Empire like trilogy, right? Yeah. Thrawn's in that, and
he is.
I believe when we talked about before, like this is him as like a protagonist. Yeah. That is definitely him as an antagonist, right? Yeah. How do you feel like these 6 books that we've read and seen them compare with like whatever you remember from that from years ago?
It's hard to compare just because I have nostalgia for the old Thrawn, and I feel like that matches Rebels way more. Okay. Or at least that characterization way a bit more. But I mean, I have room in my heart for both. In terms of like direct comparisons, I mean, this one is Thrawn centric, whereas Heir to the Empire has Luke and Han and Leia and all the stuff that you're expected of with Star Wars.
You're in our galaxy with those characters and
firmly in the Empire. This one I enjoy separately for just being able to appreciate and learn more about the Chiss culture, and I can bring that type of thing for whenever if I end up playing the old Republic as an Imperial agent Chiss. I can now bring in a lot of extra lore building of what my character would be like.
Yeah.
What
are you gonna name your character then?
Exactly.
Do you pull it from one of the families?
I know. I gotta pick a family. Yeah. So I can appreciate it in that way.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that it's gonna be very hard to beat. Like me discovering a new Star Wars trilogy when I was young in the library.
Sure. Yeah. Especially in the time where it's like there is no more visual version of it, right?
And that had they had Joris Kaboth, who was this like mad clone Jedi. He was a clone of a Jedi, so he goes crazy and he shoots Force lightning like this. Like it's hard to compare.
Gotcha. So you have Palpatine.
Yep.
You have that guy.
Dooku does this.
Dooku. Yeah.
This guy does this.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
I think I have a Joris Kaboth over there.
Neil Boyce said, would you guys ever do a podcast about the original Thrawn trilogy? I just finished it for the first time, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I would love to. I mean,
the only non-canon book we did was the Death Troopers.
Yeah, we did Death Troopers, which is a Legends book.
Yeah, and I just tried to push that in because I've always wanted to read it. I loved like the zombie trooper idea, and it was for October. So
I'll amend that by saying yes, I would love to. As soon as we get through all the canon stuff. Next is how long will that take us? Just because there's a lot to catch up on,
Sure, yeah.
There's a lot. The Death Troopers was good just because it was Halloween themed.
Yeah, I just wanted to there's not a lot of horror Star Wars, I don't think, and I wanted to pull that in there. Yeah. I think we said about that. Next is like, oh man, but what about this?
I know.
What about the canon stuff?
I know.
So,
well, after that, we do have another book we're going to be covering next, Gonk. That is Reign of the Empire, The Mask of Fear by Alexander Freed.
The Mask of Fear.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this is a book that's going to pair very well with those of us that are going to be watching Andor, because I believe it's supposed to be kind of like Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, Saw Gerrera stuff.
Oh, really? In this book?
It's also one of the newer books as well.
Okay, that's cool. I know those characters.
We know those characters. I think for Andor last time, we did the Saw Gerrera and Jyn Erso book, right? Rebel Rising or something like that.
Yeah, we did 2 books around those times, Catalyst and Rebel Rising. Rebel Rising was the one we did for that, yeah.
So we'll be doing this one. So if you guys are interested to follow along, please do. And it will be, apparently it's going to be a trilogy, someone says, but it's the first recently released book that we'll be doing while Andor is airing. So jump in.
Okay, cool. I look forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to grab some more questions in a little bit, but I also wanted to bring up a topic.
Your Skywalker name topic.
Yeah. So Melanie and I the other day, I can't remember what exactly we had been talking about, but we ended up in a conversation talking about the name Skywalker,
as one does with their spouse.
Yeah. I don't know, but yeah. What's the ringing?
Pizza's here.
Pizza's here. But anyway, the idea of Skywalker, if we go back far enough to Shmi, Shmi Skywalker has Anakin. There's no father. I don't know a lot of the history about Shmi. I don't know if it's covered in other spots and stuff too. Really. But the topic we kind of talked about was that what if Skywalker isn't really the last name, and the last name is a little bit like we saw like Han Solo was like, my name's Han. He's like, what's your last name? He's like, I don't have a last name, or whatever he says exactly. He's like, okay. He's like, well, who's your parents? He's like, nobody. I'm Solo. Solo. It's like
Solo.
Yeah,
I get you.
Like he just kind of made a name. I was like, what if Skywalker is a little bit more of like when we've seen Game of Thrones and they have like bastard names where it's like here is someone and like they don't really have a family name. Yeah. They are Snow or they are Sand or whatever names. Common like
names.
The John Doe, like there is a last name that they're kind of given. And I was like, what if Skywalker is kind of more like that? It's not necessarily a last name. It's something that you're just taking when you don't really have one.
Sure.
And I was like, huh. And as I talked about it with Melanie a little bit more, because it was kind of like we went through and we were talking about, I was like, well, whenever it's kind of weird that like, well, Leia Organa was taken as a name, and that made sense because it went with Bail. But then why did Luke? You'd figure you want to hide Luke Skywalker because he's Anakin Skywalker's kid. Why do you keep the same name? Why not be Lars? Why not change his name there since he went with them?
Sure.
But what if Skywalker is a bastard name? So like, what if there are other Skywalkers out there, but we don't get to really meet them because we're really following these characters.
Sure.
And then as we talked about it a little bit more, I even went as far as to like, well, if that was the case too, having Rey at the end taking a bastard name that you usually don't want per se, and being like, no, it means something. I'm Rey Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like that kind of could even add a little bit more meaning to that. So it kind of developed as we talked about it into like
Sure.
like a fun little fan theory experiment that we developed, and I wanted to bring it up, and
theories.
and like I wanted to kind of bring that up and just talk about like this little idea I had and like how silly it might be, but also how like interesting it could be as like a little story thread, because I don't know about the history of Skywalker beyond Shmi, you know?
I mean, I think by the time of the sequel trilogy, Skywalker is a whispered name amongst the bad guys and a celebrated name amongst the heroes, right?
Sure.
Like the little kids in the father stable are like, "Oh, not gonna think I Luke Skywalker," you know? I like to imagine that during the times of the Clone Wars, young children, as these evil robots are descending upon their world, might look up and be like, "Skywalker," you know? So I imagine it's a name that eventually gets a lot of respect.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you never consider anybody being like, "Oh, Skywalker, that's a mighty name for a slave." No one seems to mind or anything. So I am curious on what like the state of Skywalker is. From what I understand, I was trying to look stuff up. It's meant to be just another name out there, you know. It's not like Rockefeller or Kennedy.
Yeah,
it's like
sure.
Johnson or Antilles. You know, we have a couple Antilles. Like,
Yeah, Antilles becomes a name where it's like, ooh, an Antilles. I know Antilles,
yeah.
but
There's a Bail Antilles mentioned in episode 1 that might go up for Chancellor, you know?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But it did send me down an interesting rabbit hole of, because a common thing is like, why does Luke keep that name? Like, you know, Vader's just so scared of Anakin that he never bothers to look like, well, where could a child be? you know, my family, you know, which I mean, all of this is trying to cover up for Lucas's plot holes, which he has many, and we don't care now because we're many years removed, just like we won't care about the sequel ones once we're
many years removed, yeah.
But I did find this really interesting quote from Pablo Hidalgo, and his word is not, you know,
sure.
He just said it was headcanon, but his headcanon is that Luke goes by Luke Lars. And does so the entire movie up until he comes in and says, "I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to save you." Because he hears that his father's name was Anakin Skywalker. And as he comes in to save Leia, he doesn't use his uncle's name, who's no longer there. He uses his father's name. And that's when because he's never called Luke Skywalker until before then.
Sure, I guess that's true. You don't hear, like, Luke, you know, they just call him Luke. You never hear him say a last name.
Yeah,
I get what you mean.
And I thought, like, that's a fun idea. I don't think that's the intention, but it's a fun idea. But thinking about it, the only thing that kind of bothers me with it is that Biggs, like, hears him referred to as Skywalker. He doesn't go like, "What? Who's that?"
Who?
Yeah,
sure.
He just accepts that Luke is called Skywalker, which to me would mean that that's not a big deal for him to say that, right?
Sure, yeah.
And I realized that we're trying to cover plot holes that didn't exist when the movie was made, so it's who cares anyway? This is just fun nerd stuff.
Yeah.
But I did kind of like that idea that actually he did go by Lars until in the moment of heroics and I'm going to do something with my life. I'm going to save the princess. I'm taking my father's name back. That was kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that bothers me in that that specific scene was always that Leia went, "You're who?" He goes, "I'm here to rescue you."
Yeah.
Like, it's like, why are you worried about who I am? But I was like, no, she asked you who you were.
Yeah.
I always thought it was like a weird,
Sure.
like, wait, is it weird that she's hung up on who he is? Or is it weird that he doesn't answer it and he goes, "I'm here to rescue you. What are you talking about? Let's go."
Sure.
There's just a funny, like, response back and forth. But no, okay, that's interesting where it's like, no, I've been Luke Lars this whole time, but now that my uncle and aunt are gone and I've learned a little bit more about who my father was, I'm going to go by that name.
Yeah.
You might have that a little bit more if you learned, like, you know, if Obi-Wan, was that the first time that he ever heard his dad's, like, last name there?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I know they talk about, like, oh, apparently he knew my father.
I mean, I read so much into that scene anyway. I can read one more.
Sure, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those things where, like, as talking about it, we kind of started just crafting and theorizing and stuff too. And it's like, I don't know how names are done in Star Wars or anything. Like, Han Solo's last name is clearly not originally Solo, but he doesn't know who he is or where it came from, and they just made it up. You know,
so many characters have just one name; they don't have a surname in Star Wars. And I don't know why the Empire is conforming. No, everybody's got to have two. We'll make them up. You know, but I suppose that's kind of similar to like. People that would come into America and in the New World, they would like Englishify their names or give them like, what, you don't have a last name? Okay, you're Smithson because you're the son of a Smith.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, a lot of names came from like jobs and stuff.
Yeah,
right?
From vocations.
Yeah,
so
like that is a common thing that happened.
And
in history.
That Skywalker, Anakin, Luke, Rey, they do that name proud.
Yeah,
they are all three incredible pilots.
Yeah,
you know?
And Shmi being like a slave, I don't know her slave history. No. We talked about like if Tales of the Skywalker, do we get to see Shmi before Watto or what happened there? But like, who was her parents or what's her lineage from?
Okay, go with me here because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But we know the name Skywalker separately is from the Chiss.
Sure.
We know. I don't know if we know this. The Chiss appear in the Old Republic, meaning that they're not just in the Chaos and the Unknown regions. They've spread out.
Sure, and it's referenced in one of the books at some point, too, of like having some kind of like...
Okay, I'm making this up on the spot. What if the Grisk want the Skywalker so they can use them, right?
Yeah,
what
they're trying to figure out how they
What
navigate.
if they can't get Chiss, but they get another Force-sensitive young one, and it's Shmi Skywalker, and she's an amazing pilot and all this stuff, Then they erase her mind. And I don't know. I was just coming up with something. And that's how she's called Skywalker.
The Chiss getter or the Grisk getter?
I was saying, because I don't imagine the Chiss would bring a human to do that. That would be probably against what they're saying. But the Grisk, maybe in trying to like crack the code of what the Chiss do, might be like Force sensitive. Oh, this lady seems like she's Force sensitive. Look at this midichlorian thing. It's weird, And then that's just me playing around and trying to come up with a reason. Because that's the only other thing is that the Skywalker name appears here and it appears here, and we know nothing else about it.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, and it seems to be separate.
Yeah.
And isn't it officially like the Chiss language closest to Galactic Basic is Skywalker? It's not that they use the word Skywalker, right? Because they're speaking a different language.
I mean, yeah, they must be speaking their language.
Their mouth sound isn't Skywalker. That's just what it translates to. Am I right about that? Skywalker is like the translation. Yeah. Okay. We also got a sub.
Thank you, Megamind.
Megamind, thank you.
Sup, Blind Waves.
Sup, Megamind 754. Another thing I was thinking of while you were mentioning like the Rey taking the Skywalker name. You remember? This would be a weird connection, but remember like a couple Badonkagonks ago we were talking about Lucas's original ending when like Obi-Wan dies and Qui-Gon takes his name at the end of that movie?
Yeah.
Like we talked about how that was the original ending and it changed. If that were to happen, that would be kind of like an interesting bookend of like, well, Rey takes Skywalker's name, like her master's name.
Yeah.
Like, oh, shit, that kind of would have worked.
Yeah.
A little bit there. But
would have had some connections.
It would have had a little bit of connection. I mean, I know that Rey taking Skywalker name is kind of this like, flag for people that don't like those movies to be like, no, she stole it and all this stuff. But I'm like, Luke and Leia are right there. They're like, yes, be part of the family. The name Skywalker shouldn't die with us. It should live on. People should continue to look to the sky and hope the Skywalkers will help us.
Sure. The name Skywalker with those kids was hope. Right, that was a hope thing. People were hopeful. Luke Skywalker, he's a hero, right? Like it was something they looked at and inspired them, and you want to keep that inspiration going. So, no, I get that, and I've never had issues with it. I just thought like, in the idea of having a name that like, in Game of Thrones, you don't want to be a Snow. You want to have like a real last name. You know what I mean? I thought it'd be interesting. It's like, well, what if Snow became something that meant something?
Yeah.
And people were like, no, I'm going to take it.
Really turn that name around.
Yeah, it changes it. And now Snow isn't as big of an insult as people would think it would be or something,
It's like Deku.
Yeah, exactly.
From My Hero Academia.
He takes that name and turns it into his hero name. Yeah. And he makes it his own then, So, I don't know. Interesting little thought experiment I had with that. But
definitely.
But yeah, I don't know what chat thinks of that. I did see, while you were talking about it, Nexus said something about in the Queen's, which one was it? Queen's Hope story. Shmi helped to develop a device to help free the slaves.
Yeah.
So like she's done some other things.
Well, I mean,
we know about
Anakin.
Shmi.
We can't just say that everything special about Anakin is from the Force. I think that diminishes him. I think that his natural abilities as a pilot is also talent, but I think that his ability to fix things could very well come from Shmi.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, being compassionate and curious comes from Shmi.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Shmi taught him about mechanics. Yeah.
Good.
Yep. But anyway, that was my Skywalker
That's the
conversation
Skywalker.
that I kind of wanted to bring up a little bit here.
All right, everybody. Well, we only have a couple more minutes left, so
Yeah, we have a couple things here. Olo Chugu, who sent in a super chat. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Olo. What we really need is a Tales of the Separatists, telling the story of the real Separatists and not just what the conspirators are doing, and showing that they were not all evil.
Yeah,
we're not evil. And,
completely agree.
Yeah.
Like we've said it so many times, but the opening of Episode 3's Crawl is not justified in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't see heroes on both sides.
No, not in the. If you watch the movies,
Yeah.
it's not like wow.
Yeah.
How are the heroes on both
But
sides?
I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You Tales of the Banking Clan. Sorry.
It's a bunch of mun. But you got Plagueis in that.
Yeah,
You could do Banking Clan like around Plagueis times.
Yeah. And then Jorge with another super chat who said, thoughts on Tales of the Confederacy, where we actually see the heroes on both sides.
This is a winning idea, Filoni. Get to us.
Also an episode from the first-person POV of a battle droid, and we follow it from factory to different battles.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Because, battle droids are kind of like fodder, but there's got to be one that's like, I was made 10 years ago, and I've made it.
Yeah, right?
Roger.
Same with clones, right? But I feel like clones develop skills.
They do.
Whereas droids just have programming.
They do.
So, but yeah, that could be neat. I don't know. But yeah.
Which droid would you want to be the point of view of? You want the B1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I do not want it to be a destroyer droid. I don't know what they see when they go rolling, I don't know.
Yeah, what do they see?
Like, is there like a camera that doesn't really roll that kind of like is
a
like on a
gyroscope
gyro
camera?
and is just like, I don't know.
I would
don't want it to be
imagine
like,
so. They might not rely on eyes. Maybe they have something like a scanner or radio thing happening while that's happening. I don't know. They just can't see very well because really they just like get up into a position and then start firing.
Yeah.
So yeah, play Limp Bizkit while they're rolling.
rolling. Destroyer droids are hearing the one. Yeah. That just Commander Coding just said the same thing.
Yeah,
they're hearing that Limp Bizkit song. All right. Was there any other? I was trying to make sure there weren't any other.
Did we answer all questions
that were submitted?
This has
And
never
if there
happened.
was any, I don't see any more through Twitch right now.
This is in the history of the Donkey Kong. This has never happened. We finished the questions.
One right there. I'm trying to make sure we actually did go through them all.
Yep.
Daniel, I don't believe we said this one. Do you guys want to cover more comics after you finish with Phase 1 of the High Republic comics?
Yeah, I want to cover all comics, not just because it's so much fun to read them, with you guys, especially with Calvin and the crazy voices and stuff, but just because, that's a whole area of Star Wars. We were talking about Tales of the Bounty Hunters earlier, and I know for a fact there's War of the Bounty Hunters.
War of the Bounty Hunters?
A very huge Star Wars comic series that we know nothing about.
That sounds cool.
And the only thing I do know about it is there's a major character in there that I want to read about.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
There is a comic plan.
War of the Bounty Hunters.
Yeah,
Man, you know what? There's a lot of wars in Star Wars.
There are. There certainly are.
Zyad had said, where does Revenge of the Sith rank in your top 5 Star Wars movies, if it is even there?
I want to protest. The worst thing you could have me do is rank my Star Wars movies.
3rd.
So you go Return of the Jedi number 1.
Nope.
No.
Nope. I've said before what my favorite Star Wars movie is, and it's probably not most people's favorite Star Wars movie.
Okay.
Star Wars Episode 1 is
Episode 1. Okay.
my number
For some
1.
reason I thought you had Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi is my number 2.
Okay, so you go Phantom Menace, and then you have that, and then you have
And then I have Revenge of the Sith, I think.
Gotcha.
Phantom Menace, I think, is just it has the most nostalgia as a kid going to theaters.
Yeah.
Like, I know so many people that love A New Hope because they were young, they went to theaters, they were so excited, it was so cool, Phantom Menace was that for me. I loved Star Wars, and this is my first theater experience of a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't hit a lot of home runs when I was a kid doing baseball, But when they were like, hey, the coach was like, if you hit a home run, I'll take you to go see a movie. Or my parents said it or whatever. And like, I hit 4 that season.
Damn.
And used every one to go see Star Wars Episode 1. That's what I wanted to do. So that was,
Oh man.
I was like, I'm hitting home runs. I'm going to see that movie.
We're going to be, next month is going to be the 26th year of The Phantom Menace, I believe.
26th year?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. 25th anniversary was last year, right?
Yeah, I think so.
20th anniversary. We're going to have Revenge of the Sith is coming into theaters like this month. Like later this month, I believe.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah. I want to answer your question, but I feel like in order to properly rank, I have to have a standard more than just your favorite. It has to be like, tragic or, because it's, how do you compare Return of the Jedi and Revenge of the Sith in terms of like the emotional weight? I feel like it's almost impossible because they're direct contradictions to each other,
Sure.
And I think it's a fool's errand to compare them. But if I was forced to, it would be high. It would probably be my number 1 in the prequel trilogy.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it has some of my favorite action moments. That opening scene is so good with the combat and stuff. The lightsaber fights are real good.
Yeah.
But for me,
I love Ian McDermott's performance as Palpatine, but I don't think he's ever more Palpatine than in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
No, I
swings
get
for
that.
the fences, man, in some of those scenes because George Lucas forced him to.
Yeah. No, I get you. I think Return of the Jedi hits higher for me than Revenge of the Sith, just
Okay.
because of the more positive side, the defeating
Sure.
of the bad.
Yeah. At that point, that's your preference, right? Some people have
Yeah.
a preference of like, no, I think the tragic is actually a better story.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I think the happy ending is a better story. None of you can be correct.
Yeah.
Ranking
I think it's
full-hearted.
also why I don't enjoy Empire Strikes Back as much.
Yeah.
Similar to like the last Thrawn book, where it's like,
Sure.
one, it's in the middle, so like you don't get a lot of resolution.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting resolution in episode 3 because I knew there were more stories, but I enjoyed the story and the tragedy and the sadness and getting it all connected. And it's just the spectacle of episode 3.
Sure.
I think is really good.
Yeah.
Episode 6 just has the resolution of so much, and I really enjoyed that a lot too.
Sure. Yeah, I get you.
I would say that episode 2 is probably my least favorite Star Wars movie, unless you're counting like holiday specials and like that kind of thing,
I'm not.
because then that's the
I'm
bottom.
not. We know what the movies are.
The bottom.
There's 12,
There's 12 movies?
isn't there?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10,
Clone Wars.
11. Oh, that's what I'm missing. Is the
That's
Clone
the
Wars
movie.
I'm missing the Clone Wars movie.
When I was studying for the movie Schmodown, I had to study the Clone Wars
Well,
movie.
I was like Solo, and then I was like Rogue One, and I'm like, what other movie is there? I'm like, then you said Clone. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I forgot about that.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna have the Mando one soon, right?
Yes, we are.
So
Which,
that'd
from
be
what I
cool.
understand, it has a much smaller budget than, which I think makes sense because if your main characters are Mando and Grogu, you're not really. Pedro Pascal's not going to get like the biggest paycheck from there because he's mostly not in the movie,
suit.
But I actually think that Star Wars would benefit from not having the largest budgets you possibly can, and give the artist a little bit more constraints because Lucas had a lot of constraints, and in that you find a lot of creativity. I think that'd be kind of fun, or just maybe produce like little specials and stuff too that are live action. Could be fun,
That could be cool.
but like smaller budgets.
All right.
Yep.
Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for questions today. We are
Alrighty.
going to be having another podcast. Let's see. This is April. I think it's May 1st. I think it's the first Thursday in May, which is May 1st, which we will be having Andor, I think, going on during that time.
I believe so.
And then we have this book, which is kind of there along with some Andor relations, maybe. So we'll probably might get to talk a little bit about Andor and where we are with some of that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
But maybe in the future at some point, maybe we can talk about where we would rank the Star Wars movies, Eric. I know you love doing that kind of stuff.
What would our standards be though?
Even
Can
though
we
I
do like
ripped out
different? Can we do like best choreography or
You can't just
like-
say what your favorites are.
no? Because it's
Why you gotta have
incalculable.
You set your standards, and then you can tell us what your favorites are for that, and I'll just rate which ones I like. If I was like, you know what, I really like this one, and I like this one a little less. I like this one a little less. I like this one a little less.
We'll do that. Okay, we'll do that, and the next one will come in. We'll rank your kids. How about that?
Sure.
You said it so quickly.
I don't think they watch this show, so
They don't watch. You imagine like 50 years from now, like you die, and then just like wish it could like we could watch all Dad's old stuff, and they put this one on.
Not this one.
Not the ranking.
No,
one.
don't watch the last Thrawn book one. Okay, whatever you do, never watch that one. So, all right, guys. Well, that's gonna be I think it for today's episode or podcast. You guys have the next book, which was Reign of the Empire?
Reign of the Empire,
Right.
the Mask of Fear.
What a name! I'm excited to see what that's gonna be like. And May 1st. And if you guys have any other thoughts of things you'd love to hear as topics or anything, we have some more comic stuff that's going to be coming on down. If you didn't catch those, make sure you guys catch on the watch those. There's 2 of them out right now for some newer comic reaction read-alongs that we did. And I think they were a lot of fun.
Yep.
I don't judge my Christopher Walken.
No, do judge it because you'll judge it fantastically.
Otherwise,
depending
though,
on
guys,
your standard.
I think that's everything for now.
Yeah.
So we'll catch you guys all on May 1st. And until next time, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Gone.